Good morning. It is November the 5th, and it is currently 10:09. This is the Budget and Public Employees Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier. Vice Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie.
Present.
Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Velasquez. We have 3 present.
Thank you. With that, we have established a quorum. Second or the third order of business will be approval of minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from October 29th, Wednesday, 2025. It was moved by the alderman from the 5th, seconded from the alderman from the 8th or 7th. I'm tripping today. 7th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier. Aye. Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. We have 4 aye votes.
With that, we have approved the minutes from October 29, 2025. Next order of business, item number 4 will be board bills for review. We are going to start with the alderwoman from the 10th on Board Bill 95. And whenever you're ready, Madam Alderwoman, you can proceed with your board bill.
Good morning, everyone. My colleagues and everyone in the room. Madam Clerk, can you please read the summary for Board Bill 95?
Board Bill number 95, introduced by Alderwoman Shameen Clark-Hubbard and President Megan Green as co-sponsor. This board bill recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating a sum of $9,350,000 of one-time unreserved general operating reserve funds for deposit into the Tornado Relief and Recovery Fund for the purpose of supporting winter-related emergency shelter and additional tornado disaster relief to support housing of residents impacted by the May 16, 2025 tornado. It has a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. So before I get into Board Bill 95, I do want to acknowledge that I passed out here in preparation for the discussion later on, this communication division case for their salary review. If we wouldn't be here and be aired right now if not for STL TV. And so I made it wanted to make sure you all know Alderman Browning, I forwarded to you as well and make sure that it's in the draft for the rest of our colleagues. But the invaluable role that STL TV plays in the work we do down here, I think we owe it to them, right? To be intentional, listen, and then be intentional to advocate for them. A Board Bill 95, moving funds for tornado relief here 6 months later. I know I shouldn't have any problem or any pushback on this bill and moving this bill. If you have questions about where the money came from, I'm claiming him today, even though he's not here for me, our Budget Director, Paul Payne, who I reached out to earlier, just in case anybody had any questions about general operating funds or how we come with the surplus. Again, the role that we play here legislating these funds and then trusting and believing that it's going into departments that are going to do the right thing with it and that are going to help people on the ground has become a challenge. And so for me, instead of opening up about this board bill, which is pretty straightforward, what it's going to do, I would rather take and have as my speaker so that she is not limited to the 3 minutes. One of my constituents, Kim Holt, who I heard from just last night about the challenges that she is dealing with. So here, while we're legislating, while we're the departments working and supposed to be standing up these programs and doing these resources, I want to make sure that we take this time to hear from somebody who's living it 6 months later, has not tried to take advantage of anything, has tried to do it the right way every time. I want to acknowledge that Mr. Jonathan Strong, I'm not sure if he's in the room, did reach out to her directly for me a month or so ago. But again, I just heard from her last night. And so I reached out and asked and got her the link today. And instead of me talking about the need, I think it would be better, best heard from her.
All right. Did you have, is Ms. Holt probably online?
She was sent a speaker link, Ms. Kim Holt, and she said she was moved over.
I'm not sure. Is she on here under Kim Holt or under a different name possibly?
Let me see, her email is Brooklyn. While they're getting her on, I'll just continue to reiterate that I think this will be the opportunity for if there is any correction or course correction we can do for these programs that we can hear. Can you raise your hand, Kim? Because I know you're watching because you're texting me. I know you're on. Maybe it's a different name. I know nobody's in a rush. It took 6 months for us to get here, so we can take the time to hear from people while we get this worked out. I think it's very important. We get these calls, but many of the people that play important roles in this funding and this programming and these processes after us don't get these calls, right? So this, what better way to not only hear it, but capture it and hopefully be able to help. I think is.
Ms.
Hi,
Holt,
I'm here.
are you under the name Kim George?
Yes,
All righty, thank you. Could you please show your face for me?
yes. Let me figure out this out. I'm sorry, I just stuff. Put it on my computer and I moved it. So. Okay, I'm just gonna have to probably just speak because me and my computer doesn't work that good today. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Miss Kim, I apologize. Per the rules and we do have to have a visual of you. Are you able to pull it up on your phone?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and try to do it on my phone. You can come back to me. I apologize.
Okay.
I thought I was ready to go.
That's okay, sis. So what we'll do is see if you all have any questions for myself, the mayor's office. I see we have the Office of Recovery here, or Budget Director Payne while she works out her audio and visual.
All righty. We will go in order of seniority on questions from the committee on Board 95, starting with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Noted.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Sanye.
I don't have any questions. I would like to Make a motion to embank.
Second.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanye,
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning,
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez, Alderman Devote,
Aye.
Chair Aldrich,
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 4 aye votes.
With that, Board Bill 95 is embanked. Did you have any further questions, Alderwoman Sanye?
I don't have any questions, just for the sake of public education. If you could share just, I think your bill shares a number of things that are focused on kind of rapid rehousing efforts. So if you could share just any of that on the record for the sake of public education.
Yeah, rapid rehousing is one of the major things as we're dealing into this season change. I know is on the forefront. I will bring up our director of the recovery office just in case he wants to add some additional context for us. Person again that's on the ground that still sees people sleeping in their tents in front of their buildings, or even worse, sometimes than what you think might be worse is a tent is sometimes even more dangerous sleeping in these buildings. The needs are great. We know again going into this, but there's also room and flexibility in this bill and the funding and the mechanisms that this bill creates to meet some other still very relevant needs, day-to-day quality of life needs for our people, our constituents that survived this tornado and what they're going through. I'll let, again, Mr. Nix speak to if any other specific context he wants to add, but I think like other bills we've done like this, there's hopes that we have for it, there's things that we want done with it, and that we believe are gonna be done with it, that we're hoping gonna get done with it. And so we take these opportunities to get it on record so that when it's not being done, we can call it out.
And Mr. Nix, if you just state your first and last name and the office that you work in.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Julian Nix, Chief Recovery Officer, Office Eric Harris Spencer. So first, thank you all for allowing me to come before you all. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Pearson, who's also here from Department of Human Services, taking a major lead on all of the broader housing efforts, both with this board bill, but also the next board bill that you all will be looking at. This work is a collaboration for this bill. It is both looking at our broader pre-disaster unhoused population, where we have had consistently not a strong kind of winter response on how we help that population, but also focused on our tornado residents. There's a lot of different aspects of this board bill that it will help fund. One is existing shelter and expansion of shelter operations. We recognize that that is not the first or the best choice that we want for residents, but we recognize that housing and rehousing takes time, and we want to make sure there's not any issue with enough shelter beds for people who do need warm places this winter. But the more bigger parts of this bill from a recovery standpoint is we have relied historically on rental assistance primarily from FEMA program. That money in that program is starting to sunset, and will in December, a lot of houses will either be renewing that or will have failed to renew it. And then there are a number of residents who either did not apply or who were ineligible for that rental assistance program. So one, this expands our ability to provide rental assistance to broader populations to help them with housing, to pair that with our vacant unit turns and intermediate housing that we're making available to help people get housed. And it also funds other broader programs like more investment in intermediate housing as we start to see the requests come back to support bringing vacant units online exceed the existing allocation capacity. So this helps us provide all of those direct areas, both temporary and intermediate housing options for residents within the tornado zone. The other thing I'll comment on, as I know this has been a conversation this committee has been extremely interested in, I know our public has been, is the speed to which we've been able to get out resources. This is not a typical contract in a lot of this. A lot of what has delayed our ability to get resources out into the community is that none of these programs and none of these things were designed and planned before the tornado. So we've had to build them. The difference in this bill is that it does a couple of things that really helps accelerate getting those resources out into the community. One, it actually will build on existing. Many of these contracts are already passed as a assistance program or as a contract management, that we are simply amending it to add more dollars into an existing contract. So this should not take nearly as long as it did for the first round. And most of these contracts we can move within 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the timing of E&A. What it also does, it also suspends some of the barriers that we've talked about in our broader procurement process, which is primarily our PSA committees. So it does suspend the need for us to go through the formal RFP process that requires us to get a whole group together, publicly post the RFP and all of that. It still does have a strong check to ensure we're doing right by taxpayers by making sure whatever contracts we pass still go through E&A. So it does still ensure transparency to the public while allowing us to move faster with speed tied to this emergency effort. And with that, that's all I had to say, unless
Stay up here probably because they might have some other questions, but just I want to make sure that people watching and people listening understand that. So some of the things he said, even the things that he said might still cause a problem, I want to believe that the mayor, the comptroller, and our president here, if they need to call special E&A at this point, they need to do things to move as fast as we can with these programs, which I know you all are. I'm sure they will. I would hope they will. I know they will. I claim that. And then we as well, and not just in the suspension of rules. We've done it before, and this tornado recovery will call extra. So it's not on the meeting side on that, and so we can help work with you all to get anything else to your point. So what he's saying is that programs that are already in place that are having some capacity challenges or some challenges in getting them off the ground, this builds into them. That's good. I want to make sure people understand that. So the time that he was saying that they were calling to get form committees and do other things, we passed that, is what he's saying. Thank you. And then also just reiterating, because I know how the media works and how they like to pull sound bites, and it was in the news, and I have gotten assurance from the mayor's office. I have gotten assurance from Dr. Pearson in the Department of Human Services, but for the record here, I'm not in support. I haven't gotten support from any of my colleagues and anybody in the community that has reached out to me about the 1,000-bed shelter that was talked about when they talked about these hearings and these bills. So I want to make sure we on record here that we are not, well, let me speak for myself. I am not in support of a 1,000-bed shelter being ran by outside entity here to try to meet this need. There are people that are on the ground every day that can meet this need, given the resources and the capacity to do it. And I think that we should pull and pour into them because they have the relationships with the people already and with our communities already, versus that would be, to your point, taking the time to put that out, build that up, and bring people in from outside of our city for that. So that wasn't nothing that it needed to respond. I just want to make sure it was on the record.
All right. Alderwoman Sanye, did you have anything else more to it?
No, just thank you to the Alderwoman and Officer Julian Nix, Dr. Pearson, Casey, anyone else who I'm leaving out, the community, everyone who has kind of gotten us to this point, for you all's leadership.
All right. Alderman Devotie?
I do have a few questions and follow-up. One goes to one of the items that the Alderwoman just mentioned with respect to shelters. I noticed that there are 5 different items, appropriate categories of expenditures, the first of which is congregate and non-congregate shelters. For my benefit, if not the public's benefit, would one of you please explain the difference between those 2 items?
I'm going to call up Dr. Pearson for that.
My name is Adam Pearson. I am the Director of the Department of Human Services for the City of St. Louis. So for emergency shelter, we typically do break it off into 2 different categories. Congregate is defined as a large room or a series of large rooms where there are multiple people in that room. Sometimes it can be 15, 20. We have shelter providers here in the city of St. Louis that can shelter up to 100 people in a single room, and so that's considered congregate. Non-congregate, the definition is people are kind of split up into different spaces. The way that we've been using the term for the recovery office is our partnership with different hotel providers, and so that is considered non-congregate shelter where you might have a family here, just kind of split up like that. Certain settings are a little bit more conducive for recovery for different populations, and so for people with special needs, older adults, families, they might be a little bit better suited for the non-congregate setup.
Fair enough. Thank you. There was also a comment or a statement made, I think, by Mr. Nix with respect to the speed of the distribution of these funds. And we have heard quite a bit through this committee, a fair amount of frustration from folks living in the tornado zone of getting the kind of help that my understanding these funds would be meant to. Do I understand that the thought or the theory at this point is that the systems are now in place, systems that before May 16 simply didn't exist, that they are now in place, and whether it's talking in terms of shelters or rental assistance, repair of homes, the procurement of housing units, whatever it might be. But the thought is that those systems are in place, and that what these funds are essentially doing is complementing or supplementing ongoing relationships that have been formed and contracts that have been executed to date, and that we believe that we'll be able to roll these funds out to help people as the weather is getting ready to turn fairly quickly?
Yes.
Can you explain, please?
Yeah, so they are all either things that are in place or are already in progress. So we think about the initial 30 million of RAMs that was set out by the Board of Aldermen. We announced the funds, but we had to go establish the contracted partners, what that service would look like, and design the programs. Anything that these guys are going through, the program is already in design and almost finalized and ready for launch, or it has already launched. So what that means is the timeline between the funds becoming available and the deployment we will see on the ground for these direct services will be much faster, if not immediate.
So last Wednesday night, Jim Hill gave a very detailed presentation with respect to work that has been done with respect to repair of homes. And the statistics were underwhelming, frankly, with respect to how many folks we've actually helped. I was shocked at how many people we haven't helped, frankly, to date. As we look forward and you look at this $9.3 million, what is the thought of where this gets us? Are we essentially, is the goal of this to get us through the winter season with respect to shelter and temporary housing? And if that's the case, then what's next? I mean, as the Budget Committee and the board are looking at helping our North Side neighbors, what's on the horizon? I mean, what are we really doing with this $9.3 million or so?
Yeah, so I would say the 9.3 million and the immediate in the board bill that'll be discussed after this, sponsored by Alderman Saunier, are both focused on getting through the winter operations. Where we will not have is, let's take, for example, home repair. We know that there may be up to 5,000 structures that are damaged of home repair and may need direct support. If we funded all of those homes in our existing program, even if we ramped up capacity, that's $50,000 a home. That would get you to $250 million, which is certainly not the dollars that we have. So what this program does is we're going to prioritize the dollars going into things that create immediate, intermediate shelter. So that's going to be vacant units that we can bring online. That's going to be rental assistance to help people get into vacant units. And that's going to be shelter capacity. Home repair is still a core focus. We know that that is a core need, but it is secondary because most home repairs may not be able to happen in a short period of time, but those that can will be prioritized there. So that's phase one. To your question around phase two, it is longer term, larger size investments in housing. What I recognize from the Board of Aldermen and for the public, we can't go and we're not going to go and ask for $50 to $100 million in home repair when we have not proven we can get out $5 million at speed and with capacity. What this funding can do is it allows us to open up the number of homes we can do in home repair. Ideally, we hope to make sure we can prove that we can quickly do 80 to 100 homes And we've already started investing in contracts to expand our construction management capacity and our program administration capacity to get these programs up and running.
And here's where I'm going with this, Mr. Nix. You were in my ward within the last 2 to 3 weeks, and you probably understand better than anybody the disconnect between the needs on the ground in the tornado zone and the folks that live outside of the zone and what they think has and hasn't been done and needs to be done in the future. And so when we speak with them, these funds essentially are aimed at helping city residents within the zone get through the winter season. Is that fair? Meaning we're not allocating $9.3 million, and when this money is spent, we're where we need to be and we're all moving on our merry way. I mean, this has a very finite purpose. Fair statement?
That is correct.
Okay.
There will be some people, so the rental assistance program, for example, that will extend past winter. It is longer term rental assistance that'll go past there, but majority of the funds are directly dedicated through the winter season. And it is not sufficient to solve the bigger needs that we'll have to continue to discuss tied to the tornado.
In other words, nobody's going to print a banner and say mission accomplished. This is just another step along the way, correct?
Correct.
And finally, as I read this trilogy of board bills, my understanding is that Board Bill 95, the one we're talking about, the allocation of these funds, will essentially be moved toward your office, the Tornado Recovery Office, which is a different place for funds allocated, for instance, by Board Bill 94.
Correct.
Is that right? Am I
Yes.
understanding?
Yes, that's correct. The $3.3 million is allocated directly to the Department of Services. That bill is primarily focused on the pre-disaster unhoused population. All funding historically from pre-disaster unhoused population has always run through Department of Human Services. The $9.35 million that Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard is sponsoring will go to the Recovery Office. Some of those funds may be allocated down from the Recovery Office to DHS when it comes to the relevant services that they serve, but the other ones will go to existing other contracts either held by the Recovery Office or other departments. So we allocate it to the Recovery Office so we can then allocate it down to the right as we work through it.
Understood. And as usual, thank you for your patience with me.
No, thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Alderman Devotie. I don't have any questions on this bill. I'll just kind of echo something you said, Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, just because it was out there. I want to make sure as these things move and know a lot of this funds, especially as we get into the unhoused, is going to be critical. I would just hope as we identify shelters or congregate places or not, that it is a number that is not where we're going to be packing people into one location like sardines. I know that it was out there that maybe 1,000 people in one location, which is I think would be crazy. But I do think the purpose of using these funds to help our unhoused is definitely necessary in that process. So that's all I have to say. And I know Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, it looks like your expert is on to be able to speak.
I love that you called her an expert because she absolutely is living it every day. And I thought about that when Alderman Devotie said somebody's going. I don't think anybody's going on their merry way with this one anytime soon. As a matter of fact, some people, we lost lives, and people's lives will never be the same. So nobody's going on with their merry way, which is why we have a responsibility to advocate and stand on the things that we do down here. Dr. Pearson wants to also make a public comment about what you just uplifted.
Yes, I think in the media it was presented that we are looking for like a single large room, 4,000 people. I don't think that is necessarily going to be a sustainable or ideal option. I will just say that for the process that we've been working through for honestly, more than the past month or 2 months, is identifying a number of different sites at which we could leverage for some of these winter sheltering opportunities, whether it is congregate housing or non-congregate housing. I think in the past, just as a nod to typically how disasters work, when Red Cross first came in the community to stand up operations during the response phase, the ideal in the early days is to set up a large space with multiple beds based on what their operating model is. I think that we're a little bit sort of past that, obviously. We're 6 months past that, and we have a number of other considerations to think through. So I did just want to say that what I am interested in pursuing is multiple sites where we could have individuals receiving congregate and non-congregate services.
Thank you for that. Quick question. Do we have sites identified? Because I guess as this get fast tracked, because we want to be ahead of the winter, and we keep saying winter's coming, but it's here. Do we have sites identified that we're looking at?
There are a number of individuals across several departments and teams that are out in the community talking to business owners, prospective sites, having conversations about what non-congregate shelter and congregate shelter could look like. I think we'll have a little bit more details moving forward, especially as we roll out some of the funding opportunities for providers that would help us to actually operate those sites.
Mr. Nix is up.
But I did want to confirm, there are existing sites, and we're focused on identifying additional sites. So there are a set of initial sites that will get funded immediately coming out of this that we already know.
And we could talk about that offline, especially for the ones in the 14th. As I always say, we have the most unhoused facilities in the city of St. Louis. We doing our part. And, when Peter and Paul, they're doing great work. When they opened up without communication, that can cause some issues within the community. So as we look to expand sites, most of them we know are in the ward. And, I'm all here for continuing to make sure our ward's a champion, but it also brings a level of, without that conversation and communication within the community, a set of problems. So as we identify them, I just would love to be in conversation with you all about it, because I know probably looking at some in the 14th, and we should just talk about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So for the alders here and kind of for the public, our first focus is where we have existing housing shelters and existing housing providers is to maximize the capacity of the institution organizations that exist, and then is to augment that capacity with additional churches and augment our experts on the ground with additional staff where they don't have the capacity to oversee all of those other additional sites. But we will make sure that as we secure that list, we'll work directly with the Board of Alders. So you all are aware of where and what that might look like in your ward and address any concerns.
Thank you.
Miss Holt, if you can raise your right hand. The first thing she was your expert, I wasn't going to swear in, but I'm just still. Can you hear me, Miss Kimberly? Miss Kimberly, can you hear me?
It looks like you still on mute now. Now you off.
Okay. Can you see me and hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Miss Kimberly, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for all the confusion. Thank you for having me here. I spoke with Alderman Hubbard yesterday in regards to how the programs that the city has implemented since the tornado recovery started. We, meaning my husband and myself, have applied for every program that they have. And we found out in July from calling the office, well, actually my husband went down to the mayor's office and spoke with Mr. Garrett, to find out that the applications that we put in June when they were first open were discarded. That we were told that there was a reference number that you were supposed to get once you filled the application out. I explained to Mr. Garnett that at the time I applied for the application was the same day that it hit, and I applied for it sitting in front of the mayor when she had a meeting at Herbert Hoover. I applied for those programs. They must have been purged because he had no record of it. Well, I had to reapply after waiting a month and a half to find out that we were not ever going to get a call. We still have not gotten a call on any of the applications. And the day that they hit, that's the day that I applied. I spoke with the mayor about 2 months ago when she was at one of the churches, and I explained to her what had happened. I gave her my card, and she gave it to Mr. Nix because he was also there, and that they were going to look into it because they hadn't heard anything about applications being purged. Well, here we are now. We have gotten our roof completed. We've gotten all the debris removed from volunteers that live in the area, but nothing from the city. The only thing the city has done is once the debris is set at the curb, the city comes and get it. But it's the volunteers who called the city to make sure the dumpsters were dumped or they paid for the dumpsters. We got a call 3 weeks ago from Kwame asking when can they come and top our roof and help us with debris. I said, you're 4 months late. We're now months later, and all we have is a roof and debris removed. None of the programs we applied for have anybody responded. Garrett has not responded anymore since July 17th. And I'm trying to find out who is the city serving, because they're not serving any of the people that's on my group chat that live in Academy. That I know for a fact. And I don't understand it because we pay our tax money. Nobody ever expected to have a tornado. That's the only thing I would tell an insurance company. Well, that's the worst that can happen. So I don't need your $875,000 on my house. I don't need that because there's not ever going to be a tornado. Well, it was one and nobody was prepared. And I understand that. But to me, it looks like the buck has been passed. There are so many different agencies that are getting these funds that are supposed to have the funds to supply to the residencies. And that's not happening. A lot of those people are not qualified to accept these funds because, for one, a lot of them they're not doing construction. So how are you manning what we thought was a construction facility? You're giving out materials for unhoused. And I appreciate that for those that are unhoused. We are actually not. We had another place to go. But it's like the left hand doesn't know the right hand. And it's very frustrating. I've had many times that I've cried for those people that live off Newstead where they're living in a tent. I was not in that predicament. But nobody should have to go through this. And you're going through FEMA, you're going through all these other agencies that will make you wait 4 and 5 months to find out you don't qualify or they deny you. So this has been an overwhelming process. And I know if I was homeless, it really would be a problem because I wouldn't just be talking to you. I would be on every newscast that's out in the world for them to hear what is going on. The passing of the buck is the only thing I see. The communication is not there at all. The people that call you, they're not educated on what's going on, not your situation, regardless of whether you've emailed or not. So we called our alder lady because we know she's on first hand with the city office to see why is nothing happening.
Thank you.
I'm done because I'm frustrated and I don't want to be on here crying, but it's really sad.
So thank you, Kim. What you might not be able to hear, the support in the room for you, the support for your testimony, which is why I said it would be important, and I felt the importance for you to be here this morning. But I want everyone listening to know that Kim is not alone. These are the calls that I get daily And here, as of late, for some reason, not even just in the 10th Ward, but in other areas. And so while we know the role we play and we know the position and platform we have, we are responsible, I believe, now, we are responsible for making sure that you're heard at the times when you don't feel heard, Kim. So again, thank you for being here. I'm sure that now you're going to get the calls. I'm not sure that you're going to get what you needed again because you are past some of the things that I know that you are looking for directly. But I hope that if there is anything that you can get, and are assured that people will be advocating and fighting for you. And most importantly, again, repeatedly, that you are not alone. And so for my colleagues, just know that her story is not the same as other people's stories, but they all have a story. Wholeness, we know, is going to look different for everyone. But we have to make sure that we are standing in our positions, ready, not just doing this work here, but advocating for them any way we can. So with that, I'm asking for your favorable consideration and do pass recommendation for Board Bill number 95.
I make a motion that we pass Board Bill 95 with the do pass recommendation.
Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderman Devotie.
Aye.
Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 4 aye votes.
With that, we have sustained the motion with 4 aye votes for the do pass recommendation on Board Bill 95. Alderwoman from the 7th, you are recognized on Board Bill 94.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Board Bill
4.
94. I just still, that last testimony is still sitting with me, so I'm just trying to resituate my mind. Board Bill 94 is a bill that is in front of us that proposes that we move $3.36 million in Rams Interest Fund primarily for 4 purposes: for increasing temporary winter congregate and non-congregate shelter capacity, for increasing access to warming centers or warming buses, for increasing access to safe transportation for unhoused residents who need to get back and forth between facilities, and for increasing staffing and operational capacity to serve the unhoused in our community. I think my colleagues at this point are very familiar about, my position on these issues, which were very strong pre-tornado, but are absolutely emboldened post-tornado, because I think it's abundantly clear to us a couple of failure policies, a couple of investment failures, and also just that the line between housed and unhoused is a lot thinner than we would think it to be. I do want to highlight that a lot of what this legislation is aimed around is actually, I had the chance to be working with the Continuum of Care and a number of providers who do that specific work for quite some time, and volunteer with them regularly and see them regularly. And so a lot of time we get into a situation where when it gets freezing cold, we have no one but community organizations, volunteers who are really stewarding these efforts, which makes it extremely difficult and leaves gaps. And so I think the hope with this legislation is for us to kind of step up our role and to be able to provide some real support for that work that happens, and definitely a lot of focus on the fact that we know that a population that we were already struggling to serve has now increased exponentially, in proactive effort to get in front and address those matters. I won't belabor the point, but I really do want to make sure that I thank members of the community, Continuum of Care folks, a number of organizations who have just been a part of these conversations and really doing this work. I think when we do the bills, sometimes people only see us, and I wish that I could show a picture of just all of the wonderful individuals and folks who do this work and really are responsible for my advocacy for this legislation and for standing in front of you all.
Thank you, Alderwoman. And when we get to public comments, I apologize. We're going to also take a comment on 95 as well as 94. So, but we will go in order of seniority with Alder people that may have questions on Board Bill 94, starting with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor on this one as well.
Noted.
Alderman Devotie.
I do have a handful of questions. Can you give us some history, some background with respect to, I guess in years past, how much money the city has allocated to deal with the four needs identified in Board Bill 94?
Absolutely. I'll let Dr. Pearson take us there.
Yes, so the city in the past has dedicated varying amounts of funding towards homeless services, transportation costs, congregate shelter, non-congregate shelter, that sort of thing. I can only speak towards what my department does, but there are at least two other departments that have in the past funded some homeless services, including the Department of Health and the Affordable Housing Commission. And so typically for the Department of Human Services, we get an allocation of around 1.6 million. That is ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant, serves as funding primarily for emergency shelter, a little bit for outreach services, a little bit for coordination services, but primarily to serve people who are unhoused on the streets. That money comes through the Community Development Administration as a pass-through from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban. Did you have another?
I was just going to follow up. So my understanding with respect to these particular funds, this 3.3 million, is they will be allocated to Department of Health. Is that right?
Department of Human Services.
Department of Human Services. I apologize. I misspoke. Fair enough. And that's what you had just talked to us with respect to your experience in past years. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, these funds will not then be overseen by the Office of Tornado Recovery. So rather with where they are going, they will be applied citywide. Is that correct? Or they will be available to be used citywide?
So we do everything in partnership with the Office of Recovery, and again, I applaud the efforts of Alderwoman Sanier here. There's a lot of collaboration across the board. This money would be used to shore up some additional beds for the pre-disaster unhoused, whether they're on the north side, south side, east, west. And so the Continuum of Care, for those who do not know, is a consortium of homeless services agencies that work across the city to set homeless services strategy, coordinate beds and shelter beds, permanent supportive housing, all of that. We've been working with them, the Alderwoman's been working with them to identify what they do typically, historically, for the unhoused population. This money will be used to support a lot of those efforts. Nationwide, over the past year, we've seen an increase of 18% in the unhoused population, and we've seen that reflected in St. Louis as well. And so a lot of what this money is going to do is to help support some of these efforts to get the pre-disaster unhoused in on the coldest of nights, of course, with some additional funding for warming buses, other transportation needs, shelter beds, that sort of thing.
Certainly, that's understood. I get that. As part of the budgetary process this past spring, did we not allocate some funds to your office in anticipation of this need?
We did.
Knowing or not knowing, at least part of the time, that we had the tornado at our doorstep.
We did, yes. So we requested, I think, $550,000 from Prop P, and then I think we received $300,000 from Prop P for some additional allocation towards the unhoused. Now, some of that was to help mitigate the fact that we've been steadily spending down ARPA money for emergency shelters. And so we are not where we once were at the peak of the pandemic with the CARES Act money, with the ARPA, where we were funding a significantly higher number of beds with that additional federal money. And so we requested more money just as a stopgap to help cover us for some of the winter operations.
So this seems like a fairly sizable increase in funding for these type of services versus what we have historically done. Fair?
Yes, that's fair. And I'll add something on because one, I'm newer to this, kind of with the board. And I'll start by when you asked the first question, how much has the city funded into our in-house? It's not enough. All of the dollars have historically come from federal dollars and federal grants, and we've given very little to Department of Human Services to actually solve our in-house population. Everything that I've looked at and everything that our office has observed has been a group that has gotten enough funding where they are trying to make nothing work for a huge problem that has been massively growing for years. So from our perspective, every aspect of our planning, every aspect of our work has been a reactive, how do I make a dollar stretch when I need $10? And so what this strategy is doing is making a massive investment to make sure this year we are actually positioning ourselves to have a size of shelter that actually can fit what we know the need is. This is one-time funding, and we recognize this won't solve the issue for next winter. And so the goal is for us to solve this one, for us to work collaborative with the board, because as you all know, our administration came in at the time where most of the budget was set to make sure that as we look forward, we invest in housing at the size of what's required and not what dollars may happen to be laying around that we can put into.
We must have talked a handful of times in the past because I think we start to understand where the two of us are going in our conversation. So you anticipated kind of my next question, which would be, we have this allocation this particular year. Obviously, this is a unique year. It's something we haven't faced in the past. But is this the kind of amount that as a budget committee, as the city, we need to be prepared to be dealing with in years moving forward to adequately address this particular issue?
I'm definitely going to let you all respond, but I would absolutely say, as Alderwoman of the 7th, that I 100% think that we definitely need to have these proactive conversations in figuring out how to embed these resources more permanently within our system. Something that is just true that I know Dr. Pearson and I are both familiar with is a lot of times because, again, of the city's processes of what it takes to move money, when we get to a point where it's actually freezing cold and operations have to be stood up, a lot of times those organizations are left to do that completely on. Last year when we had winter, the city didn't do a warming bus until like the very last minute, until it was freezing cold, and in full transparency with a lot of advocacy and pressure from myself and from, you know, organizers on the ground. And so I think the fact that they had to purchase their own warming bus last winter, the fact that like literally when they stand up these pop-up shelters, I've often volunteered and they are asking to give me a box of pizza. Can the city give me a cot? And we've experienced some real struggles sometimes with walking out that preparation. I think what has happened post-tornado is, you know, from my experience, I think that these individuals, as well as others in administration, as well as alders, maybe an issue that we had kind of been delaying action and certain conversation on, just gotten so embroiled in, and we kind of got forced because I think, you know, we don't want more situations of what happens of the person who was on the vent across from the, you know, City Hall, but also trying to me, the point of us collaborating, myself and Alderwoman Shameen Clark-Hubbard and Alderman Aldridge in these offices and making sure that there are different use deals, it's not doing a one-size-fit-all either, because obviously there are folks who have been unhoused for quite some time that have a different set of challenges than someone who just had a tornado. And so I also think that part of the way we're moving these packages is to make sure that folks in the spectrum of need of housing, that is available to them as well.
I think I hear you saying that this particular administration is looking at past experience, perhaps instances where the city, past administrations have failed to step up to the plate, failed to identify prospectively potential issues, and are trying to head things off at the pass and actually be prepared for what might happen here in a handful of weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that
in advance, we're planning and we're trying to avoid past sins.
I would say that, but I would also say, in credit to the past administration, and I think obviously a tornado changes the complete landscape of the conversation. I think a big problem that you have is when you talk about the unhoused population, I think there are some of our colleagues when we first started the conversation, or even members of the public, that when they picture an unhoused individual, they see somebody who is strung out on drugs, sitting on a corner begging for money. Post-tornado, there's clear evidence, and it's in a lot of folks' face, and very clear that that is actually not what the average unhoused person is. And so that changes the narrative, and I think that changes the momentum and the things that you can advocate for and successfully get across the board, because now people's images of when they picture an unhoused person, I hope you picture someone, you think of the folks that are living in tents in their houses right now. I hope you think of the folks that are living in their car, and it is not just, sometimes the one image that mainstream media puts in front of us. And I think that that has a lot to do with our ability to have these conversations and push additional funds there.
Yeah, and I maybe want to add a couple comments. Yes, one, the last administration did invest dollars through ARPA dollars into housing efforts. I think what we are working to do is improve upon some of the things that we've learned that did not exist in planning efforts. So to your question, Alderman Devotee, are we planning in advance? No, we are not planning far enough in advance. The reality is winter planning should be starting the moment the last winter ended, so that we're planning for that in the budget cycle. We have a plan by July, and then July through October, November, the groups are just working to implement a plan that's already been defined, and we are not there. So we are still starting from behind, and when you add on a tornado, we don't expect this to be a easy winter, and we don't know what we're getting into yet. What we are trying to do is set up a proactive plan that we think can work, but we will learn more on the ground about what doesn't and what does. When we talk about the 3.3 million, I don't know if that's the part that we're going to need in the next budget. What we did here was we allocated what we thought was enough, and ideally excess of what we think we needed. We will see how the operations run, how much we end up spending, and we'll be collecting and investing in the data practices that help us understand what the need was this year and can help us better plan for next year.
Fair enough. Thank you.
If I could just add on one more quick comment. So to the question about what exactly is needed, I think the crux of a lot of these conversations is based on how we can get people into a warm bed this winter. But I think what we're seeing at a federal level is a disinvestment in permanent supportive housing. And so a lot of this is about emergency shelter, but we do need to call out the fact that there are a number of people in the St. Louis community, almost 3,000 individuals, who are taking part in permanent supportive housing programs that may also be at risk. And so that it's, as we move forward in discussions in this next coming year, we'll need to think through not only shelter, emergency shelter, but also helping people get stable long term.
Dr. Pearson, I remember very vividly Dr. Mahdi coming in front of us in May or early June, whenever it was, and talking about how the change in the federal funding landscape how it was significantly affecting the department. So I understand that, and I do appreciate that clarification as we start thinking about what does the future hold. So thank you.
With that, I'll take a motion to embank Board Bill 94. Or I'll make the motion that we embank Board Bill 94.
Second.
It was moved by the Alderman from the 14th, second by the Alderman of the 5th. And I'll also ask a previous roll. Seeing no objection, we have embanked Board Bill 94. With that, we will go to public comment actually on Board Bill 95, and I think Ms. Annie Rice would be first. Ms. Rice, if you can raise your right hand to swear you in. And while we're doing it, do we have any public speakers on 94?
We do.
Okay, if you're also a public speaker on 94, can you raise your right hand if you're in the room? All right, we're gonna do it all at once. Do you all swear to tell the truth? Keep your hand up, Annie. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, we will start with Ms. Rice on 95. Ms. Rice, did you also want to speak on 94?
I would.
Okay, so since we messed up, you have 3 minutes on 95, and then I'll give you 3 minutes on 94 right after. But you can proceed, first and last name and ward you reside in.
Thank you so much. My name is Annie Rice. I work with Arch City Defenders, and I'm a resident of the 4th Ward. So on Board Bill 95, I want to thank Alderwoman Clark Hubbard for bringing this bill forward, for moving quickly, for such a thoughtful and intentional conversation about the bill and about the money and about the need in the community, for bringing and centering community and the needs, and not just what the city can and can't do. So thank you for an incredible presentation this morning. We absolutely need to move as much money as we possibly can to get to people to save lives. We lost lives last winter. There are more people who are in danger this winter than ever before. So I am grateful that this money is moving forward. I want to note that transparency and accountability obviously is really important in this process, particularly as you heard from a community member who has not been reached. So the more that as these monies are moved, the more public communication, both with people who are residing in the area and with the general population and the organizations that are serving people on the ground, the more communication, the better about what funds are being made available and how people can access them, and follow through, making sure that people are actually accessing that money. Is really important. We have vacant hotels in downtown St. Louis. We have vacant dormitories just across the border into St. Louis County. Are we talking with county entities about where people can be housed? Are we looking beyond just our own borders? Are we asking for help? If we are looking for true places for people to be safe over the winter, and to potentially be nearby to their homes that have been destroyed. There seem to be, to me, a lot of options. I will say today is November 5th. The temperature today is 70 degrees, but on Sunday, the high is 40 degrees. The low on Sunday is 23 degrees. We are into freezing temperatures, right? And so, I appreciate that conversations have to be had, but we're past the point of conversations. We're to the point of get people into safe housing, get them warm, get them somewhere safe, and figure out some way of protecting the buildings that they are having to leave as they go into shelters. So this is such a significant need. I'm grateful that the money was found. I'm grateful that the money is moving forward. Anything that we can do to keep people in their homes, as some folks are facing eviction from tornado impacted homes, there's a significant need to utilize resources and programs that exist, like the right to counsel, for example. Can some of this money get moved in there? So that's what I have on Board Bill 95.
Perfect timing. You had 10 seconds. It's like you've done this before.
Fine. I usually don't have to limit to 3 minutes, though.
All right. We will go to you on Board Bill 94.
Okay, great. I also would ask if there may be others that wanted to testify on Board Bill 95 as well. So just a flag to ask for those.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rice. There is one more person, but her hand was up online, Ms. Rachel Hurtado. I'm not sure if you're wanting to speak on 94 or 95.
I can testify on them both together after Annie's finished.
Sounds good. We'll
or however y'all would like to do it. Yeah.
We'll swear you in after Ms. Rice. You can continue, Ms. Rice.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so on Board Bill 94, I just want to significantly thank the Alderwoman from the 7th and the immense work that she is doing this year and has done in her term as Alderwoman to work with our vulnerable populations, to work with the unhoused. She has continually championed getting money and resources and in intentional communication and intentional inclusion to folks that have been left behind. So she herself is working to be prepared. She's working with a coalition of community organizations on the types of intentional strategic planning that hopefully, Alderman Devotie, we can talk with you soon about as well, so that we are not having this conversation in November of next year unprepared. So we will be in touch on that. But I do want to say, we are hundreds of beds short every year in winter operations. The point in time count is insufficient for understanding who our unhoused population really is. We have deaths every year in the cold. and folks who have significant disastrous injuries that they suffer as well from the cold. Those can be prevented. This money does need to get out as quickly as possible. And I do think that there are organizations who are ready to accept the money, who are ready to expand operations that are currently ongoing. So I don't think that there's concern about, new entities showing up that aren't a part of the community or are going to be in any way risky. Like there are a lot of people who are trusted community partners who are ready to expand operations with this money, who may not have otherwise been able to operate this year. So we're grateful for that. We're looking forward to talking to you about operational goals and operational strategies going forward. And just a note that the reimbursement model of the way that winter operations work is one of the things that hinders these operations every year, as shelters have to stand up and put money up front before they're able to then get reimbursed for anything that they've spent. And that's a really difficult way to operate. So that's why we are grateful for this money. We're grateful for the emergency, for the recognition of the emergency that goes along with this bill, and looking forward to longer term strategic planning. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Ms. Rachel, who's online, if you could raise your right hand so we can swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And you may proceed on 94 and 95 as well.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rachel. I am a resident of the 7th Ward. I'm speaking in strong support of both of these bills, 94 and 95 today. For Board Bill 94 first, I am extremely grateful for Alderwoman Clark Hubbard's hard work on this bill and in partnership and collaboration with the rest of the board and our elected officials. And I just want to lift up a critical need for this funding that hasn't been named explicitly yet today in the hearing. Absolutely, rental assistance is critical. Absolutely, home repair is critical. Another really critical city program that is deeply underfunded right now is the Right to Counsel program that enforces the right that tenants have in St. Louis City to have an attorney when they are fighting an eviction filing in court. Funding the Right to Counsel program is not only required by city ordinance, it's also, and that ordinance also being championed by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard in 2023. This is a huge part of post-tornado stabilization that is being overlooked and not spoken about enough right now. I am a part of the We the Tenants campaign. We're a grassroots renters' rights and advocacy group for St. Louis. And we've been meeting every month and more frequently since the tornado. And we've been having more and more tornado impacted folks show up in the room. Just last week, we had a meeting and there were multiple folks who were tornado impacted in the room who currently are dealing with evictions. Like we're in eviction court the same week, getting evictions from their landlords. And I know that this is not a surprise to some folks who are deeper in the recovery work, that whether that be landlords needing to get people out of their homes by evicting them to do some sort of repair and choosing, a violent way to do that. Landlords that are larger owners of big buildings and complexes that are using the tornado as an opportunity to evict all of their tenants at once. This is happening all across the tornado impacted zones. And so it's really, really important that this program is more sustainably and fully funded. Since this money is being allocated to the Office of Recovery, and we heard that they're going to have the power to move that money to other departments, really encourage the alders who are less familiar with the Right to Counsel program to review the first year of the program's report. The number of cases that the attorneys are able to take is an absolute microscopic amount compared to the number of evictions that we see in St. Louis City every year. This is 5,000 evictions in just the city pre-tornado, right? So we don't even know what that's looking like post-tornado with the data. So when thinking about where this $9 million is going to go, really want to urge folks to move some of that money into the Right to Counsel program to fund eviction defense for tornado impacted and other tenants who are facing eviction and need an attorney in court when the deck is stacked so far against them and landlords win 99% of the time in those courtrooms. So that's 94. I'll move on to Board Bill 95, also in strong support of this bill, and also the rapid spending of this funding. I really appreciate the discussion today happening on this committee around what is in place now and hopefully being able to move these funds more quickly. I went on a street outreach route just last night with a volunteer crew that steps in the gap every single week, especially in the winter, to keep folks in St. Louis City alive in the cold. And every community member was asking for blankets. People need blankets. People know that it's going to be 23 degrees this weekend, and folks are not prepared for that. And this group hasn't received any blankets yet from the city to distribute, and we're already in November. And so not only am I extremely grateful for Alderwoman Saunier and the other folks who have championed this bill, but also just really want to urge alders who are working closely on this to put extra pressure and go out of your way to figure out how we can move this money more quickly beyond, suspending the rules and the things that y'all are already doing, because these funds needed to be on the streets yesterday, and we know historically how slow that's going to move. In support of both of these bills and grateful for everyone who's been working on them.
Thank you, Ms. Rachel. Going back to 94, Madam Clerk, you can go in order.
We have Mr. Matt Ingram from Ward 6. You have 3 minutes.
No, there's a button right there. You just got to. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm from Ward 6. I can keep this quick. I volunteer with the street outreach group as well, who serve, connect with, and advocate for our unhoused neighbors downtown. When it gets cold, the same volunteers helping out with this group every week make up a large portion of the volunteers serving winter outreach here, making sure folks who are stuck outside in the deathly cold can make it to a warm bed. It's almost always a hassle to find an open bed. It almost always relies on the competence and dedication of specific volunteers to figure out how they can get someone into a bed. It shouldn't have to be so difficult. It shouldn't be hard to solve this problem for the people who just are trying to stay alive through the night when it's cold. Please pass this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Next, we have Ms. Lindsay Myers of the 13th Ward.
Hello, I'm from the 13th Ward. I have previously worked with the CC House, which is a nonprofit organization for unhoused city, and was a coordinator for winter outreach last year, every Monday when it dropped. Number one, a CC House waitlist is over 6 months long. Number two, we get calls every single day when I worked there, and we could not find a bed for people. 211 is a joke. I would love for more investigation on that, but to put it frankly, I was the person that was in charge of winter coordination last year when a woman died, and we had to pause and think, did we not do enough when there were 5 of us on the streets looking for people? This is a serious problem, and it should not be up to the goodness of people's hearts who last year too, we doubled the number of years because of freezing temperatures that we were having to go out looking for people. And so that meant that all of the volunteers were already stretched and were not able to meet the needs of folks on the ground. These are human beings, these are human lives. And also, since Larry Rice closed, our city has not funded a shelter of that much since then. We are beyond the need. And now with the tornado folks, it's just like, this is the question of, should we allocate these funds? Yes, and more. And let's start right in March again to think about this, because the most vulnerable in our community die each year because of this. And it is on the tiredness of us volunteers to figure out how the hell we're gonna make it work. And it's ridiculous. Like, we need to do more. And I ask for thank you, Alderwoman Saunier, for doing this, but also like, let's step up, y'all. Let's step up. We can't do this again every year. We can't have folks die. You know, what if it was your kid, right? So that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Next, we have, I'm not sure of the last name, Ray Mosine of is this the 9th Ward?
Yes.
Could you pronounce your name at the mic, please?
Ray Mawson.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here in support of anything that help the people of St. Louis, because I believe it's by the people, for the people. And we need to populate St. Louis, not to depopulate St. Louis. And on top of that, we had that tornado. So we have to draw the line, corporation or the people, for the city of St. Louis. We have to draw the line as the whole culture, locally, nationally, and internationally. Everybody's looking after the big guys, the corporations. We have had our experience here in St. Louis with big corp money. We see the results 20 years later. I don't know how much. Did that help populating the city of St. Louis, bringing income to the city of St. Louis? So I believe in investing in the people of St. Louis, bringing people to St. Louis, not letting people fly away and run away from the city of St. Louis. I'm a long-time resident, investor, and business owner in the city of St. Louis. And what I see, I don't see that change that we would like to see for the city of St. Louis. I go with the plight that lady with the orange, she was talking about her housing and the response from the city. I agree on a lot of things that she said, because I'm a business owner. I didn't wait for the city or anybody. But all the obstacles that I had to go through with no help, and that's with my own money to get things going. On the other hand, for other corporations or big companies, the doors will be open for them. But for the regular people, it's not. So anything that will help the people of St. Louis, we're talking about the people, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mosen. Next, we have, I believe, Drew Falvey of the 9th Ward. If you could pronounce your name for me at the mic. Thank you.
Hello, how y'all doing? My name is Drew Falvey. I am a co-founder of a grassroots nonprofit Lifeline Aid Group, and I'm also a resident of the 9th Ward. So, Alicia, I want to say thank you, first of all, for doing this.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you pronounce your name for me again?
Drew Falvey.
Thank you.
Of course. Alicia, I want to say thank you for doing this, and it means a lot. First off, I want to say, if we are doing shelters this year, will tornado victims be turned away? How will we know if tornado victims and homeless, unhoused people, how will they know the difference? Because oftentimes I've worked shelters myself, I've ran shelters myself alongside my state representative, Kimberly Ann Collins. I want to know if community members in tornado zone areas, have they been at the table, and what solutions will be held? Because I've ran into so many unhoused folks from the tornado, especially in my ward, and I really want to know, is there a safe place for them to go without being turned away? Another thing I want to bring up, because of the divestment in North City, the same community that's been affected by the tornado, it is also the very same community who is often so left without inadequate support throughout the winter. There have been plenty of times where I've ran shelters and we have been unable to get the help from city as well as from community members. I want to know what will change this year out of all the others, because I'm tired of having shelters, not having enough beds, not having enough room, coming up with excuses just so they can get by. What's going to change this year and the years to come so we can make sure that I am not losing any more clients to this winter cold? We need answers. We need them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Falvey. That will be all on Board Bill 94.
All right, Alderwoman, you can proceed on Board Bill 94.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, community. There's certainly a lot I can say. I think what's very clear to all of us is, and something I've tried to be clear about the whole time, is obviously our work is far from done. This bill is not a fix-all. These bills do not mean we're not going to have a challenging winter. I think we can hear pretty clearly from community that there's some valid frustrations because there's a feeling that we are moving slow and not matching the urgency that folks have in the community, whether that is tornado recovery and or unhoused or the many overlapping efforts. So I do want to just on the record make sure I'm giving my full commitment that this is not something that I think is a one and done conversation or a one and done action. I don't think this is a solve all, and I hold myself accountable to needing to make sure that I'm continuing to stay at the table. And I think there are a lot more conversations to have and actions to be taken around these issues. But I'm really thankful for the folks who came out today. Obviously, you guys could be doing anything and you're present today. I'm thankful for the many people who have emailed me and in support. I'm really thankful to the 7th Ward for having passion and understanding for our unhoused, for our vulnerable, for the tornado impacted areas. If I can name off all of the organizations and individuals who have been at the table and been a part of these conversations, I would, but of not wanting to leave anyone out, I just, I think for me, I just want to make sure I'm communicating to folks that I hear you, and just like this happened and necessarily you didn't know until the bills, were in front of us and were filed. There are absolutely, ongoing conversations about these efforts and ongoing conversations about efforts that are more long-term and sustainable. And I hope you got to hear that a little bit today from folks, but I also hope you continue to hold us accountable to having these conversations and to taking the action that needs to be happen on that. And I thank all of my colleagues for considering this, and a special thank you to Alderman Aldridge and Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard for our collaboration on these pieces of legislation. And with that, I would love to ask for this committee's consideration of Board Bill 94.
I'll make a motion that we pass Board Bill 94 out with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's moved by myself, the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, previous row. Seeing no objections to previous row, Board Bill 94 has passed out with a do pass recommendation. And I'm going to pass over the chairmanship to Alderwoman Sanye as I present on Board Bill 93.
Alderman, you're recognized to speak to Board Bill 93.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Budget and Public Employees Committee. Board Bill 93 is allocation of money being moved from the RAM's interest of $1 million to Impacted Tenants Fund. I do want to thank this Budget Committee because actually during the budget process, this committee actually took the charge with the amendment that I had and supported by each member to originally move $1 million out of reserve. During negotiations and conversations with the mayor's office, we found that it would be better to take that $1 million out of RAMS. As the situation happened with the tornado and FEMA was here, there was I think, pause from the administration to do like impacted tenants or relocation of tenants because they didn't want to replicate any of the duties that FEMA was doing. And in that time, that money that came from the RAM settlement out of the 30 kind of got lost. So this is Impacted Tenants Fund originally was passed by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and then we made some adjustments to the application in the HUD's meeting. When I reached out to the mayor's office to follow back up, and I want to appreciate the advocates, the organizers who have been working on other legislation, and before we moved that legislation was like, where's the money that we post at a commitment for Impact Tenants Fund. When reaching out to the mayor's office, that, like I say, money got lost. But we wanted to make sure that the word that was given to myself and the budget committee stayed true. So we are actually taking the $1 million from RAM settlement and putting it directly into the Impacted Tenants Fund and not looped into kind of the bigger $30 million of the RAMS package. I met yesterday with DHS, Department of Human Service, as well as Employment Connections, as well as, well, Director Pearsons is over DHS, to start to get the process rolling. So once we pass this bill, we're looking to actually move the Impacted Tenants Fund legislation in the next 2 weeks. Employment Connections is on board to be able to start accepting individuals, and they will be ready to start to help people that need relocation post-tornado that may not have the funds to do it. And I would open up to any questions on Board Bill 93 from my colleagues.
Thank you. We will go in order of seniority. So I believe that means that Alderman Browning, you're first up.
Thank you. Alderman, I really appreciate the effort that you've made to get these funds over to the Impacted Tenants Fund. I was there with you in budget in May. It was one of our first meetings back after the tornado, and you had prepared that amendment and were ready to move it at that time. Those funds were very necessary at that time, and my support for this bill is absolute. I want to make sure that we get this money out to people. But on that note, and I think you spoke to it a little bit, I've noticed that when I go to the Employment Connection website and I try to apply for these funds, just to test to see if it would work, it says not currently accepting applications. It's been 1.5 years since we passed the Impacted Tenants Fund. It's been 6 months since the tornado. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to a little to what's being done to get this set up and moving, because my chief concern is I want to make sure that these people get the funds they need.
I'm gonna jump in real quick, then I'm gonna pass it to the director. I think what we heard from like Rachel said, both of these programs, Impacted Tenants Fund, and I'm jumping a little bit with Right to Counsel, was both passed in 2023 when the board first got here. And they haven't been properly funded or honestly properly set up. When we got to the tornado, or when the tornado happened, one of the things that came kind of to the forefront is that people are gonna need relocation. And that's why, due to your support in the budget committee, we made I would say a bold amendment by pulling from reserves to try to help with Impacted Tenants Fund. During that time between the tornado and when FEMA was here, I think it was to the administration understanding of the way that they wanted to move with it, is that they were not going to set up the Impacted Tenants Fund process because they didn't want to duplicate any services that FEMA was doing. As we just spoke, and Dr. Pearson was on the call yesterday, we are looking forward to actually set this program up in the next 2 weeks. Employment Connections kind of have been on hold at the halt of the administration as FEMA was here to make sure that those services was not duplicated. But hopefully in the next 2 weeks that the application has already been approved from the HUD's committee. We did that a few months ago, and we're looking forward to launch this program before Thanksgiving. And I'm also going to turn it over to Dr. Pearson.
Sure. So Alderman Browning, thank you so much for the question. I think to get to your point about the delay in the funds, what I will say is when the program was first set up, I think there was an allocation in the ordinance for the program, but we didn't have an account set up. I will say between the months of June and June 2024, January 2025, DHS has worked collaboratively with both the building division and the budget department to actually set up the account, make sure that there is revenue in the account. It took us quite some time to figure out what money we may have access to. When we first started the discussion, the account didn't actually have any money. I think per the ordinance with the building division, it was going to be the operational funding was going to be run through like a lead remediation type account, and we had to make sure we bifurcated that because we didn't want to attenuate any of the lead remediation activities. So to your point, there was a delay in getting it off the ground. Just from my department's perspective, I'll take full responsibility for not pushing on that as hard as I could have. I think that there's certainly a lot of moving pieces with this and all of our other programs. And so to Alderman Aldridge's point, we have committed as a team to making sure that we can roll out this first, tranche of $160,000 operationally out to the community for people to apply for the Impact Tenants Fund, making sure that that application is in the hands of the community so that they can go ahead and start filling it out.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate just the accountability and making sure that we can get this to where it needs to be. So if I am a renter who is being displaced through no fault of my own, either the unit became uninhabitable or the landlord has illegally evicted me or something that's happened here. I go on to the website and I apply. Can you just walk me through how this will work and how people apply, and then how quickly they will get the money and how the money will be distributed, just details like that?
Sure. So thank you for your question. So we do have, with these considerations, two different groups, those who are impacted by their building issues that the landlord has not mitigated, and they are now being displaced from their unit. Those individuals, as of January 1, 2025, will be eligible to apply for this money. And then the second sort of group of people will be individuals who are impacted by the tornado, who have damaged properties and who are out of those properties and will need some assistance there. Either way, for either group, what they would do is go online. I think the preference right now is to print out the application, fill it out, and then have Employment Connections receive those applications in paper form. Always open to a discussion about that, but they would fill out the application. It is a brief application. I want to say it's around 2 pages. They would give their information, their address. I think they would have to prove tenancy where they are. They would have to give some information about their landlord. They would turn in that application, and then the process would be Employment Connections staff would work with the building division to verify that somebody is in a damaged property, because we do need ongoing building division collaboration on that. They were on the meeting yesterday. I think we're on the same page about what that procedure looks like, and making sure that the building division has the operational awareness to also collaborate with this project. And so once they are verified that they are being removed or affected by a unit that is not safe for human habitation, then at that point there's going to be some communication and verification from Employment Connections just to make sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed. There then will be a recommendation to get the funding out to that individual in the form of a one-time payment, and we are making that one-time payment determination based on the HUD fair market rate of the unit that they were exiting. And so we have kind of a table of what that fair market rate is for, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. The unit that they're leaving, they will get the money based on the size of that unit. They will then be able to use that money for any relocation costs that they have. At this point, I don't know if I could speak to how rapidly that money would go out, but I'm committed to making sure that we can get that money out as quickly as possible as soon as somebody's verified.
Thank you. I appreciate that detailed answer, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor of this bill as well. Thank you, Alderman from the 14th, for bringing this forward again and just staying on top of this. I want to make sure this program works. It's a good program, and it will help people when we get it set up.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Devoti?
No questions.
I don't necessarily have any questions, Alderman Aldridge. I would just, thank you for making sure you're being persistent on this, and just uplift to everybody while we're here in the room the HUD's committee is actually going to be discussing the Right to Counsel program. Do you want to make the announcement, Alderwoman, or you? Okay. The HUD's committee HUD's committee is going to be having a hearing specifically on the Right to Counsel program on November 19th at 6 p.m. The Department of Human Services will be there. Legal Eastern Services Missouri will be there, as well as other community organizations. That's come up quite a bit. So if you have any questions about that program, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to go, because that is essentially the topic for that meeting, and it's intentionally being scheduled in the evening so that folks in the community can come out and we can figure out what it looks like to move forward with that program. Other than that, I would just thank the Alderman for his leadership on this, and I would make a motion to embank. I made the motion, Alderman Aldridge did a second, and there was a call for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we have done that. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alderman Aldridge. You're recognized for your. Is there folks online, Madam Clerk, for public comment?
Yes. We have some people here in the room who signed up, and right now we have Annie Rice online. Do you want to start in the room or online?
You can start online, and if they can cut their camera on so I can get them, and then I'm going to swear everybody in the room as well. If you're in a room and you plan to testify, can you raise your hand on this bill? Do you promise that what you're about to say is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? I can't hear you say I do, Ms. Rice.
Oh, I already swore in, but yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. We can start with online.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you so much, Alderwoman, and thank you, Alderman Aldridge, for being so determined to get this program moving, get this program funded, and get folks helped in this manner. I understand that when the Board of Aldermen creates new programs for the city of St. Louis, there are often challenges in getting those together. But I hope that folks who are in the room, the members of the board, the city administration, and folks who are watching online, or might see this in the news, see the interplay between all of these programs and how it is so deeply important to keep people in their homes via Right to Counsel, to get them relocated to safe locations if their homes become unavailable with the Impacted Tenants Fund, and then to provide shelter in the most emergent need. So we are, through all three of these programs together, you're working to try to keep people safe in the city of St. Louis in the most fiscally responsible way as well. If we talk about how much less it costs to keep people in their homes or get folks into a new safe permanent housing than it is to shelter and be working services that way. So I just want to thank you for your determination. I want to thank the community that has been also so determined to see these programs at first passed into law back in 2023, and then the continued determination of advocates and members of the community to make sure that these get funded and that these programs roll out. So thank you. Thanks for continuing updates, and we'll definitely see you on November 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Next, we have Danny Kahn of Ward 2. Is Danny Kahn still in the room? Okay, next we have Mr. Chris Wilcox of Ward 14.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Wilcox. I'm from the 14th Ward. I acknowledge, Ms. Holt's experience from the beginning of this hearing. There's enough people ready to do the work meeting our neighbors' needs, and the problem is that the city has not been supporting it. The gap between what regular people have been doing to support people affected by the tornado and what the city has done is evidence of misaligned priorities. Board bills 93, 94, and 95 are an important step in correcting that. Homelessness has been rising at a historically high rate. For years, these services have been dependent on federal funds. This marks the first time the city is devoting general operating funds to these services in years. It should not be the last. It is important that the city stop spending resources on sending cops to harass and displace unhoused neighbors. Importantly, it's a practice that has spanned across city governments, and it does damage that takes additional resources to repair. I would emphasize the city should prioritize supporting people already doing the work and not the usual big nonprofits and management consultants who prioritize investor interests over human needs. Anyone who has had to use 211 can tell you how useful it is for getting resources. I think it's clear from the hearing that the city lacks the capacity to deliver basic services when people need them. That needs to change, and there's no reason the city can't meet these needs when so many people have been working so hard at it, often for free. I want to emphasize the importance of fully supporting the right to counsel for people subject to eviction. Thanks to the bill sponsored by Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, the city is required to fund that counsel, the best way to address homelessness to prevent people from losing their homes in the first place. Finally, I'm thankful to Alderwoman Saunier, Alderman Clark-Hubbard, and Alderman Aldridge for sponsoring these board bills. I hope this is a precedent for how the city's budget will set its priorities. There's no reason anyone has to sleep on the street in this city, and not one person should die on those streets for lack of housing ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Next, we have Mr. Ray Mooson. That will be all on Board Bill number 93.
Thank you, Alderman Aldridge. You are closed. Oh, I was just recognizing Alderman Aldridge to close.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, I want to thank Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, Alderwoman Saunier, and kind of these collaboration of board bills, at least trying to do our part from the legislative side. I think we've heard last week, as Alderman Devotie has stated, as members had the budget hearing, we're not getting these funds out the door quick enough. And we definitely need to do a lot more to make sure that funds are moving to get to the people that need it, especially in the time that we're in with this tornado. I do also want to thank the Budget Committee because, again, we did take this step to actually try to move the $1 million to Impacted Tenants Fund. And if it wasn't for the advocates and the organizers for continuing to push to make sure that these programs between Impacted Tenants Fund and Right to Counsel, shout out to Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard who passed both of those board bills, get funded properly, and to make sure that we're not just passing legislation, but we're actually funding them at the board and to ensure that these programs are working. DHS and Employment Connections, I'm excited as soon as we get this across the finish line in the next week or two that we're going to be able to go live with this program and start to help people that need the relocation help, and hopefully continue to not only fund this program at the current funds that we got, but also make sure through building funds that we continue to bring in more money so that people who need relocation can continue to get it post a tornado, and also continue to look at ways that we can fund Right to Counsel. So with that, I would ask for a do pass recommendation on Board Bill 93.
I make a motion that we pass Board Bill 93 with the do pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row. Hearing no objections. Congratulations, Alderman. And you can take a deep breath, Alderman, for a second as we move to the next item on our agenda, which is Resolution 136.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Madam Clerk, would you read Resolution 136?
Resolution number 136, ensuring ethical investment of city retirement funds. Whereas the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis is steadfast in its commitment to advancing justice, equity, and the protection of human rights for all people, both within our own city and across the globe. And whereas the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis recognizes that public funds are not merely financial tools, but a direct reflection of public values and therefore carry a moral obligation to ensure its investments do not enable, support, or profit from violence or perpetrate violence, whether through occupation, apartheid, or genocide abroad, or the furthering of historical, systemic, or individual racism here in the city. And whereas throughout this year's annual budget process, St. Louis residents have expressed a clear and consistent desire for greater investment in public health, calling for resources to be directed toward improving access to care, addressing health disparities, and strengthening community well-being, since that is the moral thing to do. And whereas the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis responded to this call by taking significant steps in the most recent budget cycle to prioritize public health, increasing funding for critical health programs and services, and demonstrating a commitment to the long-term health and vitality of our residents. And whereas the Board of Aldermen is entrusted with safeguarding the investment policies of the city, ensuring they align with the social policies we hold ourselves to. And whereas on January 12, 2024, the Board of Aldermen affirmed as one of our social policies the commitment to peace by passing a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And whereas continuing to invest municipal resources in companies, whether domestic or abroad, that profit directly from perpetrating violence runs counter to these many renewed commitments. And whereas determined by the Not Another Nickel campaign audit of city investments, the investments held by the City of St. Louis Retirement Board, or the only funds that do not meet the guidelines of the American Friends Service Committee. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis calls on the Board of Trustees of the Employees Retirement System of the City of St. Louis to ensure that all of the city resources entrusted to their stewardship, including stock holdings, bond investments, and pension funds, are not invested in companies that are complicit in perpetrating violence against people within our city or abroad, according to the guidelines established by the American Friends Service Committee. Be it there further resolved that the Board of Aldermen directs the clerk of this Board of Aldermen to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and to prepare a commemorative copy of this resolution to the end that it may be presented to those deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced this 31st day of October 2025 by the Honorable Rasheen Aldrich, Alderman of the 14th Ward, co-sponsors the Honorable Megan Green, President, Board of Aldermen, adopted this 31st day of October 2025.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for reading it. I also think at the last Friday board meeting, I think Alderwoman Sanye and Alderman Cone also requested to be a co-sponsor, but we can fix that at another time. Members of the committee, thank you for hearing Resolution 136. I'm going to kind of keep it a little brief. I know we have a lot of testimony, so if there is any questions, I know I've tried to talk to my colleagues ahead of time on this. I would say that really the spirit of this resolution, as you look at the now therefore be resolved, where it says where pension funds and investment in companies that are not in compliance of violence against people within our city or abroad. I think this Board of Aldermen has took some major steps, even when we passed the ceasefire resolution calling for a bilateral peace on both sides. I think the spirit of the resolution is also saying, as city leaders, we also want to ensure that we're calling on ethical investment and that we're supporting and making investments in companies who aren't trying to bring war, but trying to bring levels of peace. I really want to give a thank you to the Not Another Nickel campaign for bringing this not only to my attention, but I know a lot of our alder people in the national campaign going on through other cities to make sure that as we, as the city of St. Louis and other cities are making investment with taxpayer dollars, that, we're just saying we want those investments to go to companies that are doing right. I also want to thank all the leaders of the organization with Not Another Nickel that are here, as well as the co-sponsors on this legislation, as well as I want to give a shout out to Alderman Browning who gave some language, I think, to make this resolution even stronger. Like I say, I know we have a lot of people here to testify, so I would take questions from my colleagues if they have any, and if not, would move on to the people who are here to speak in favor or against the resolution. And I think the cat has a question from the 9th.
We can go through our comments briefly. I do just want to remind my colleagues, obviously we have a full room, but we can go through just to give you all a chance to offer any initial comments. Alderman Browning? And is it, I forgot the name of the cat. I forgot his name.
This is Stanley, and he loves to join calls. I don't have any questions. I don't think there needs to be a question about this. We should be investing in ethical companies, and I know that there's companies that make a big part of St. Louis, but at the same time, I think that it's really important that we put our money where our mouth is and make sure that where we put our money, that is our retirement money and everything else that the city spends, that we put it in a place where it's doing good and helping people, not hurting. So thank you, Alderman, for bringing this forward, and I look forward to hearing from the public.
Thank you. Alderman Devoti?
No questions.
Okay, I don't have any questions either. I would actually just second everything Alderman Brown has said. I don't think this is difficult. I don't think this is hard. Ethical investment is actually a very bare minimum standard, and it's unfortunate these things are any considered radical. I think it's just basic humanity. And so with that, we can proceed to public comment. And if you're in the room, I'm just going to get you all sworn in. If you can raise your hand, if you plan to testify. Okay. Do you all promise that what you're going to say is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you so much. And just make sure if you do want to testify that you are signed in. The clerk will be going to order. Madam Clerk, how many people have online?
We have a lot.
So let's alternate then this time. Let's go one online. Okay. Then if it's just two online, we can start with them and then do those that are in the room. Okay. Okay. Madam Clerk is saying there's more folks coming on online as well.
Sorry. Yes, I thought my mic was on. So yes, they're popping in as.
What's there? How many?
So right now we have a total of 3, 4. Seems like as I'm speaking or raising their hand.
Let's just alternate. We'll do one online and then one in the room.
Awesome. So we can start with Ms. Sandra Tamari.
Good afternoon, St. Louis. My name is Sandra Tamari. I am a Palestinian. I work with an organization called Adala Justice Project, and I'm one of the organizers with Not Another Nickel. I'm really grateful to the leadership of Alderman Aldridge and all the co-sponsors of this resolution. It's a very simple resolution. It's calling on our city resources to be divested from harm. We want an economy that uplifts human life, that takes care of people, and it's all connected to all the other discussion that's been happening in this committee. The tornado recovery is connected to what is happening in Gaza because our economy is built on militarism. It's built on harming people instead of uplifting them. When we think about what's happened in Gaza in the last 2 years, 90% of the homes and infrastructure have been destroyed by weapons produced by the companies that we are targeting, 17 companies that are in the portfolio. City employees do not want their retirement to be invested in that kind of death, is my guess. We do not want our tax dollars to be invested in that kind of harm. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to end this harm and uplift life. So thank you for supporting this resolution. And we hope that this is the first step in creating a more just economy.
Thank you, Ms. Tamari. Could you let me know what ward you?
I live just outside the city. I am someone who works in St. Louis, but I am not a resident.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Calum Stefanelli of the 10th Ward. Speaking in support.
Hello there. My name is Callum Stefanelli, and I'm a resident of Ward 10. I want to first thank you, Alderman Aldridge, for introducing this legislation. In early 2024, as you guys have alluded to, the Board of Aldermen made St. Louisans very proud in signing a resolution advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza. Today, the board has an opportunity to stay true to that position and to its constituents by ensuring that the city is not financially complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people. 0.9% of St. Louis's pension funds are currently invested in corporations that the American Friends Service Committee has cited for human rights violations. For tax-paying residents of St. Louis who want to stand in solidarity with Palestine, that is 0.9% too much. Please advance this resolution to divest those funds. I would like to use the remainder of my time to express my support for Board Bills 93, 94, 95. I actually initially meant to speak on those as well, but due to my own inexperience in these sorts of hearings, I didn't sign up correctly. I do think these bills are an important first step towards the city bolstering its emergency rehousing efforts and its tornado relief, but there's a lot more work to be done. These bills shed light on the need for expedited investment in tornado relief efforts and more generally, greater support for marginalized housing insecure populations. As an aspiring social worker, I have a moral obligation standing in front of you guys to champion the idea that housing is a human right. St. Louis has so often been on the wrong side of history when it comes to equitably fulfilling this right for its people. The tornado had its most profound effect on North City neighborhoods that had been subject to decades of disinvestment and neglect. We cannot allow our response to this disaster to be another chapter in the city's history of housing discrimination that disproportionately harms Black residents in these areas. After the passage of these bills, the committee must continue to fight to allocate RAM settlement funds into stabilizing housing conditions in historically underserved areas. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanelli. Next, we have online Mr. Christopher Ottolino.
And I just wanted to say to the previous speaker, I know you said you're inexperienced, but I'm glad you're here, and I hope we see you here to advocate for your community again.
Hello, should I begin?
Yes, we can hear you. If you could just state your name and the ward that you reside in.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Chris Ottolino, he, him pronouns. I am a resident of the 6th Ward, 3800 block of Fairview. I am also an organizer with the Not Another Nickel campaign and a member of St. Louis DSA. I want to speak loudly and boldly in favor of this resolution. I think it is a long time coming, and I think it's a wonderful next step from the ceasefire resolution that was unanimously passed by the board previously. To echo the Alderwoman's comments earlier, I think this makes sense. It's not radical. It is completely rational for the board for us to look at our ethical investment policy to not invest in companies that engage in genocide, apartheid, or environmental destruction. But beyond just the moral case for this, I think many of us were watching last night as the largest city in the country decided and put forward that we want to see politicians that are taking bold stances against genocide, against this destruction, and it is a case that wins with voters and will help grow the power we need to fight against the rise of fascism and austerity in this country. I will cede the rest of my time because I know there are a lot of people speaking, but urge all the alders that are present and in the committee and in the full board to vote in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ottolino. Next, we have Mr. Ali Hazemi of the 14th Ward.
Hello. Thank you for gathering here today for this incredibly important issue. My name is Ali Hazemi. I'm an immigrant to
Mr. Azim, I just want to make sure the folks at home can hear you. You could take the mic off if that's easier for you, but I think you need to get a little bit more closer so that everyone can hear you.
Hello? It's better?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, and thank you for gathering here today for this incredibly important issue. My name is Ali Hazemi. I'm an immigrant to this country and have lived in U.S. for 50 years. I have spent 37 years as a small business owner and proud member of St. Louis community. In the decades since coming to America, I have seen political changes, good and bad, around the world. Some of them were surprising. For example, I remember the calls to boycott and divest from apartheid South Africa. At the time, I did not think that could make a difference. How could some boycotts bring about the end to a powerful and oppressive regime? Now I stand here in a world where South Africa is free, where its apartheid is relegated to museums and to the memory of oppression and resistance. And I also stand in a world where democratic South Africa has led the charge to end apartheid everywhere, taking Israel to international court for its abuse of human rights against Palestinian people. There's no question that Israel, as it exists now, is an apartheid state. We only need to look at recent documentaries like No Other Land to see how different people have different rights based on their ethnicity. I call for us to yet again bring about change, to once more stand against oppression. We must divest from Israel. Thank you.
Next, we have online Danny or Donnie Khan.
Hello. Can you see and hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can see and hear you.
All right. Hey, so I just wanted to speak on two things. One
Make
is
sure you
that
say what ward you're from, please.
I am in Ward 2. I just wanted to be here to elaborate that the United States, specifically St. Louis, has always been, since its founding, a military hub. It has always been a place where the military industries have been the growth of the city and also the displacement of everything that has once been there. So at the same time, the genocide in Gaza awoke me to this reality. And it's important to me to say that I have also looked into divesting my own family's wealth that they had for their own investments, for their own retirement funds, and that it actually does have alternatives. There are all profitable alternatives. They may not be guaranteed profit, but the reason that there are guaranteed profit in things like mutual funds is because we're allocating infinite amounts of money to the military industrial complex every single year, growing and growing and growing every single year, the amount of public funds that we put into death and destruction. And this cannot stand any longer. If we were to have a future at all, why would I care about my own retirement fund if there's no future? That's all. Free Palestine, and please pass Resolution 136. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Next, we have Michael Berg of the 6th Ward.
Thank you. My name is Michael Berg. Yes, I live in the 6th Ward. I'm here, part of Jewish Voice for Peace and with the Palestine Solidarity Committee. And, you know, when I was growing up in my Jewish household, we said over and over, never again shall there be genocide the way the Jews of Europe were murdered in mass by the Nazis. And we've seen 77 years of oppression and displacement of Palestinian people by the state of Israel. In the last 2 years, it's reached a level of a genocidal campaign, and that should not stand. I represented the 36% of 2024 St. Louis City primary voters who voted to not support Joe Biden specifically because of his complete support of Israel's genocide, and tried to represent that position at the state party in Columbia and was just rebuffed and stopped at points physically from representing the interests of the people I was representing. Went to the national convention, were rebuffed. You had a lot of people so disgusted with the Democratic Party for its continued support of genocide that some people supported Trump, which was a bad move. Trump's rhetoric about, cutting back from engaging the world didn't happen. He's continued to support genocide. So the question is, what are you supposed to do? Because I was told this is the worst thing possible to support. What is the proper channel to try to stop the worst thing possible? Any channel. And the city of St. Louis, the Democratic-run city of St. Louis, the leaders on the Board of Aldermen, I think, will and should understand that we should use our power of investment. We should use the power to oppose gross human rights violations. We did it with apartheid South Africa, and we can do it to oppose a genocide and gross human rights violations in Palestine and throughout the world. So this is the proper channel. There is no channel that is not the proper channel to oppose genocide. So I urge you to support this.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Next, we have online Naveen. If you could state your first and last name and ward.
Naveen, you got to come on camera if you're there. We can circle back. You can go to the next person. Oh, never mind.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that, everybody. It was a little bit of a technical difficulty on my end. My name is Naveen. I don't currently reside in the city of St. Louis. However, I work out of the city and I spend a lot of time. And this resolution recognizes how we invest our public dollars as a reflection of our values. As the board has stated, we are committed to justice, equity, and the protection of human rights for all people here in the city of St. Louis and everywhere. Our public funds are not neutral. They can either support life and community, or they can enable harm. This resolution makes it clear that we have a moral obligation to ensure our investments do not profit from violence, whether through systemic harm here at home or through conflict and occupation abroad. Residents across the city have asked for more investment in public health and community wellness, and this board has already taken real steps to move in that direction. This resolution continues that commitment by aligning how we invest with what we say and what we value. According to the audit referenced in the resolution, the city's retirement system is the only major fund still failing to meet ethical investment guidelines. This is an area where we can act, we can correct course, and where we can do better. This is not about harming pensions. Divestment is a responsible and common practice. It simply ensures that our retirement funds are not tied to suffering of others. We cannot call for peace while financing violence. We cannot claim to value life while investing in the tools of its destruction. Let our investments reflect who we say we are as a city, and I respectfully urge everyone to adopt this resolution, and I want to thank the co-sponsors of it as well.
Thank you, Ms. Naveen. Next, we have Gabby Eisner of the 2nd Ward.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabby Eisner. I live in the 2nd Ward. I'm also here today with the MICA project, which is located in the 7th.
Ms. Eisner, is your mic on?
Is it not
I
on?
think it's on. I think you're just too far from it.
Okay, I'll
You can
talk.
take it off too.
Great. We at the MICA project urge this committee to support Resolution 136. Our city resources should not be invested in companies that perpetuate violence. We've heard how some of these companies that St. Louis is invested in terrorize communities across the world, but these companies also terrorize our very own St. Louis community. The city of St. Louis invests in Palantir, a company that has turbocharged the Trump administration's war on immigrants. For over a decade, Palantir has played a central role in ICE's most aggressive tactics, from workplace raids to large-scale enforcement. The past 9 months, we have seen heightened ICE activity in St. Louis, particularly in South City. This kidnapping of our neighbors has been carried out with Palantir's artificial intelligence and data mining capabilities. And yet, the city of St. Louis has over $750,000 invested in this company. The city also has several $100,000 invested in Motorola Solutions. Motorola Solutions is a leading supplier of license plate recognition software. Using Motorola Solutions data, ICE can map people's travel patterns and schedules, their home and work addresses, and their social networks. In order to truly be a welcoming city, St. Louis must divest from companies that facilitate violence. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Alderman Aldridge, for putting forth this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Eisner. Next, we have online Ms. Elizabeth Lindhurst.
Yes, hello. Give me one moment. I apologize. I'm driving. I'm just going to pull over so I can testify safely here.
We want you to do that.
Okay. I don't know if you're able. Okay. Yes,
we
there I
can see
am.
and hear you.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm here to urge the board to vote yes on this resolution 136. I am not a resident of the city of St. Louis, but I do volunteer with an organization that evacuates children from Gaza for treatment here in St. Louis in the city. I won't say what ward they do reside in for safety reasons, but I just want to talk a little bit about how these companies have affected their lives. These children have endured hell, which we can hardly fathom here. They've lost their homes to bulldozers and bombs, Caterpillar bulldozers, bombs from Lockheed Martin, RTX, Boeing, dropped by jets that are Boeing jets, fueled by gas from Valero. We can't continue to invest in these companies ethically. We should divest our pensions from them. I don't know if I want to get into exactly what they've been through. Suffice it to say, they've lost their friends, their family, their own limbs, their legs to these companies, and it's untenable that this can continue. Beyond that, it's less than 1%, as I'm sure you're aware. So it's very easy to divest from these without negatively affecting people's retirement funds. I think this is a no-brainer, and I would like to urge the board to continue the work that they've done in voting for a ceasefire 2 years ago by divesting from these companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn Harris. Next, we have Alicia Hernandez of Ward 2.
Thank you, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Resolution 136. My name is Alicia Hernandez. I am here as both a resident of the 2nd Ward and Director of Advocacy with the Migrant and Immigrant Community Action Project based in the 7th Ward. Also, as the daughter of Mexican immigrants. I am here to urge you to support and pass Resolution 136 to ensure ethical investments of our tax dollars and our city's investments to make certain that our city's retirement fund is in line with the city's values to be a safe, welcoming, and prosperous city that we are all proud to call home. As we have heard, criminalization and war is big business. Many of the companies our cities invest in are building the tools used to surveil, incarcerate, and deport our loved ones and communities here in St. Louis and at the border. This resolution ensures that city funds are not invested in companies that consistently, knowingly, and directly profit from human rights abuses against immigrants. Currently, the city's investments are tied up in companies who are profiting from the mass deportation regime that is conducting cruel, chaotic, and indiscriminate raids here in our neighborhoods against our community members and across the country. As we know, this portion of investments represents a very small percentage of funds of the overall portfolio, and divesting from these harmful companies and reinvesting in projects that represent the values of the city will be a clear signal of the welcoming city that St. Louis strives to be. Particularly to the some 166,000 immigrants who call the metro area their home. Right now, immigrant communities in this very city and region are living in fear. We've seen increased detention, increased deportation, and tragically and needlessly have already had 2 deaths in detention here in Missouri. This resolution is a first step in ensuring that our city aligns its finances with our commitment to human rights. And as someone said earlier, it is putting our money where our values are. I believe that each one of you on this committee does value the dignity, humanity, and safety of all people. And by pushing through this resolution, we can make this statement publicly. So thank you all again, and thank you to the sponsor and bill sponsors. And I urge you to support Resolution 136.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Next, we have did Mr. Aaron Neiman speak? You would need to be sworn in. He was one of the ones that just signed on.
Okay, if you could raise your hand, Aaron. And do you promise that what you're about to say is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
I do.
Excellent. And 3 minutes, and don't forget to say the ward you're from, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Aaron Nyman. I'm a community member in Ward 9, and I am also a member of the Jewish community here in St. Louis. And I am really grateful for this opportunity to speak unreservedly in support of Resolution 136 and to thank the sponsors of the resolution as well. I'm a relatively new arrival or transplant to St. Louis. I'm a postdoc at WashU. And it means a lot to me as a Jewish person, as a member of the St. Louis community, that St. Louis was one of the first, really one of the first 20 or so major cities to pass a ceasefire resolution. And echoing what has been said before, this really is a way of just being consistent morally, ethically, and following through on what the board has already made clear about its about the genocide in Gaza. And I'm repeating other speakers here, but of course, these holdings are a very small part of the portfolio. They've actually underperformed the rest of the portfolio. So if you removed them and do a sort of back test, it actually improves the performance. Not that should be determinative, but this is just another data point really in favor of this resolution, that this will do no harm whatsoever to the thousands of workers in St. Louis who help keep our city running. This is really just about making a relatively small but actually very impactful change. And so I would just like to reiterate that as a Jewish person, as a member of the St. Louis community, passing this resolution in keeping with the ceasefire resolution that was passed earlier would make me feel quite a bit safer and more welcome, and like the city I live in was living up to Jewish values, which I really is very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyman. Next, we have Eileen Chung. I'm not sure what ward you're in. Looks like either 3 or
6. I mean 7. Good afternoon. What is going on? There. Good afternoon, Board of Aldermen. Thank you for considering this resolution and continuing your mission for peace and justice wherever we can have the power to invest in our tax dollars. I'm an art therapist that works primarily with immigrants and refugees, and the St. Louis has been known as a sanctuary city, welcoming people from all over the world who have been displaced by war. And we have a chance to divest from the increase in militarization, both domestically and abroad, to promote the ability for people to live out fuller lives as St. Louisans, and to remain in their countries of their homelands by not continuing to put retirement funds in companies like Boeing, in Caterpillar, in Lockheed Martin, where our retirement funds do not belong. If we believe in, just as everyone has been saying, in values like the pursuit of happiness and of love and of family, I don't think that anybody who is wanting to retire in peace wants their money going towards bombing children. And as a mental health professional, the complex PTSD that I see on a regular basis from folks who are from Bosnia or from Afghanistan is something that no one wishes upon anybody. So I urge you to pass this resolution in the name of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chung. Next, we have online Ms. Annie Rice. Ms. Rice, state your ward for me again.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Annie Rice, I'm in the 4th ward.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again, committee, for hearing from me. I am speaking on this resolution in my personal capacity as a former member of the Board of Aldermen and a member of the employee retirement system through that employment. I don't want the small bit of retirement funds that I have invested with the city of St. Louis invested in war, violence, genocide, and terrorizing immigrants that live in our city. We can do better. We must do better. And I'm appreciative of everyone who has brought this campaign forward, who has spoken today, who's done the hard work of organizing in the committee. So thank you, Not Another Nickel, and everyone who was involved. And to the sponsor and co-sponsors of this resolution. And thank you also to those who have pointed out the underperformance of some of these companies as well. So from a fiscal standpoint, it makes sense. From a human standpoint, it makes sense to divest from companies that are causing harm. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Next, we have Kara Bender of the 14th Ward. Next, we have Gina McDonald of the 5th Ward. Next, we have Mufasa Khan of St. Louis County.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mafaza Khan. I am a St. Louis County resident, and I am grateful for the opportunity to show my support of the divestment resolution today. Over the past 2 years, many of us have been watching a live stream genocide, and I do not have words to capture the horror of witnessing such a degree of senseless violence today. What adds to the horror is the compounding heartbreak that much of it is a direct consequence of my own taxes and my own elected officials. And it's something that I seem to have no say in. On a national level, I do not have the power to stop my taxes from supplying weapons. I do not have power over my representatives obstructing justice in international courts. I do not have power over my elected officials peddling genocidal narratives to manufacture consent at home. What we do have power over today is choosing what we invest in as a city. We can choose to invest in life instead of investing in the corporations that
I'm sorry, Ms. Khan, if you could speak up for me, please.
Absolutely. What we do have power over today is choosing what we invest in as a city. We can choose to invest in life instead of investing in the corporations that are consistently, knowingly, and directly enabling a genocide. Thankfully, very few of our investments are in such companies, and it would be incredibly easy to divest from them. And moreover, the small and simple move actually does have the power to change the course of history. Very rarely is the easiest option also the most effective. We are lucky that that is the case for us today. I believe that good things happen for you when you do the right thing. I believe prosperity for the city of St. Louis will follow when we invest according to our values. No one is free until we are all free. I hope that the Board of Alders will vote yes on this resolution. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Next, we have Shelby Moher of the 4th Ward.
Good afternoon. My name is Shelby Mohar, and I live in Ward 4. I'm here today to urge the St. Louis Board of Aldermen to vote yes on Resolution 136, which calls for divesting our city's pension fund from companies complicit in the genocide in Gaza. We all know the companies we're talking about, companies like General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, and yes, Boeing. These corporations profit from the suffering in Gaza, manufacturing weapons used to commit war crimes against humanity. That's not just a tragic reality, it's a moral outrage that we cannot look away from. It would be easy for us as a city to sink into comfortable ignorance, especially given the distance that investment creates between us and the actual atrocities being committed. But let's be clear, as long as we continue to invest in these companies, we are complicit in their crimes. Our financial involvement is not a passive act. It's a direct contribution to the enabling of genocide and war crimes. Now, I know that managing a city's finances is no easy task. St. Louis has historically been left to fend for itself, especially in a political climate where blue cities like ours are often villainized, undercut by state and federal policies. It's difficult to make progress when you're isolated, fighting for resources, and constantly under attack. But this isn't about making things harder for St. Louis. It's about doing what we can, where we can, with the resources we have. It's about taking action where it makes sense and in the ways we can. Here's the thing, these companies represent less than 1% of our city's overall investment portfolio. Less than 1%, so why are we still invested in them? If we can't stand behind our values when the financial stakes are so small, then we've missed a chance to do what's right without sacrificing our financial integrity. Divesting from these companies is low-hanging fruit and an important move that aligns our investments with the values we want to uphold. I therefore urge you all to vote yes on Resolution 136. Let's send a message that St. Louis is a city that chooses justice even when it's hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next, we have Adrian Cosby of the 7th Ward.
Hello, Adrian Cosby, Ward 7. Thank you to all.
I'm not sure what your pronouns are, but your mic is not, I don't think we can hear you well.
Thank
you
you.
could take it off too.
Thank you, dear. They, them, by the way. Thank you to Alderman Aldridge and the co-sponsors of this resolution. There should be no reason at any point that any resources or funds from St. Louis should be utilized for any reason other than to support our own, and certainly not to fund the death and destruction of human beings. As we've already heard today, the people of St. Louis are hurting, homes are still not repaired from May's tornado, and winter is knocking at our door. Why the hell would we ever use any of our resources to kill when we could use them to heal? As a resident of St. Louis and a supporter of Palestine and denouncer of genocide and apartheid, I call on the Board of Aldermen to pass this resolution. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cosby. Next, we have Greg Zinson of the 8th Ward.
Thank you. Greg Jensen from the 3rd Ward.
Mr. Jensen, yep, you're going to adjust the mic, please.
Okay. I was active in the anti-apartheid movement in the 1970s. Some may think this is a small thing you're doing today to take this stand, especially in the face of the extreme brutality in the world today. In the 70s, the coalition I was a part of brought Kielso Se'Lioho to St. Louis to speak to the universities and the community. He was a leader of the Black student South African consciousness movement. And he said that the divestment movement on the universities and corporations and municipalities was a key leg of their struggle to overthrow the apartheid regime. The apartheid regime and Israel at that time were hand in hand in all their international activities as well. And it is fortunate, as the other gentleman just said, that South Africa is leading the campaign to hold Israel and the others accountable for what's happening in Gaza right now. Here we are, almost half a century since that time, and here just within the last year, our government alone we've attacked Iran, Yemen. We've been either providing the bombs or actively involved in advising and targeting civilians in the West Bank, in Gaza, Lebanon. Here now we may be already even at war today with Venezuela. They want to bomb Colombia, Nicaragua, Cuba, who knows, China, Russia. They say they want to start nuclear weapons testing again. And if anything is going to destroy a future for our children, that certainly will. I would urge everyone to realize that the whole international campaign now, the campaign for human rights and the campaign against genocide, the conventions, the Geneva Convention, the Nuremberg trials, the conventions on the rights of refugees and immigrants that we were parties to, all these things are being terribly eroded right now. And a small step we can take to try to stop that, just putting a brake, some sort of shim in a wheel or anything that can monkey wrench this process we're involved in. Do whatever you can, no matter how small you think it is, whether it's wearing a button, a t-shirt, talking to neighbors, someone on the bus, people you work with. Any stand you can take, do it. In the stand today, history will applaud you, your children will thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zinson. Next, we have Matt Ingram of the 6th Ward.
Hello again. Matt Ingram, 6th Ward. I am a part of the Not Another Nickel campaign, as well as St. Louis DSA. 68,000 people have been killed in Israel's genocide in Gaza, a number that continues to rise and that many experts believe to be a vast undercount. I'm sure you know this number, and that to some extent you, like I, have seen the gruesome way this genocide has unfolded over the course of the last 2 years. Maybe you've tuned it out or accepted it as part of the background texture of global affairs. You have an opportunity not to do that anymore. Again and again, our federal leaders have failed to take meaningful action to stop what's going on in Gaza. Democrats in 2024 could have taken action, but they abdicated responsibility, despite the fact that a large majority of Democrats, 77% per Quinnipiac, call this a genocide, correctly call it a genocide. St. Louis is uniquely implicated in these atrocities because of our investments in and support for the companies this resolution covers. These companies are also no friend to St. Louis and the people who live here. You might recall that just this summer, there was a 4,500-gallon chemical spill of nitric acid near Coldwater Creek. That was a subsidiary of Boeing. You guys have a unique and powerful opportunity that you can take in your capacity right here to do what our federal elected leaders did not. We can be as imaginative and expansive as we want with public policy, and we should. I think the need for that is clear based on the testimonies that we've already heard today. But in order to do that, in order to make people's lives better here, we have to do something like this. We will never build flourishing on a foundation of death and destruction. So please meet your constituents where they're at and vote yes on Resolution 136. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Egram. Next, I think it's pronounced Aisha Grotto or Griddle, St. Louis employee. State your name correctly for me and your ward. Thank you.
Hello all, my name is Aisha Godel. I work as a case management specialist with the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging under the Department of Human Services. I work with seniors and adults with disabilities. I'm a city employee, but not a city resident. I'm here to urge the board to vote yes on Resolution 136 to make sure our city's retirement fund aligns with our ethics, with international humanitarian law, and with human rights. As we've heard, over 68,000 Palestinians have been killed by the State of Israel. Many of these people were relatives of my friends here in the city of St. Louis. While families are being starved, mutilated, and massacred, corporations are profiting from their deaths. The city of St. Louis should not be complicit in or profit off of these atrocities. We're calling for a divestment from these 17 companies, taking an active role in human rights violations, genocide abroad, family separation and incarceration at home, environmental destruction in our city, and corporate greed worldwide. Lockheed Martin's gruesomely named Hellfire R9X missile, designed to shred people with blades as opposed to being an explosive, was used near Al-Shifa Hospital to target journalists and injured civilians. Caterpillar's armored D9 bulldozers have been used by the IDF to demolish Palestinian homes and run over displaced people sheltering at the Kamal Adwan Hospital courtyard. Palantir Technologies builds AI-driven surveillance tools used against Palestinians and also powers the systems ICE uses for tracking and separating families here in the US. L3 Harris weaponry and tech has been given to the RSF by the UAE to perpetuate mass genocide in Sudan. General Dynamics makes bombs that Israel as a state has used to kill Palestinians by the hundreds. And Boeing, right here in St. Louis, manufactures fighter jets and bombs used to strike against civilians in Palestine and Lebanon, massacring innocent children and families in emergency relief areas, refugee camps, and civilian homes.
Here in Ferguson, we've seen how global tactics of oppression come home, how police trained by the IDF use the same tear gas in repression against our own community. Palestinians sent messages of solidarity and taught our civilians how to navigate these oppressive and brutal tactics. Now it's time for us to return that solidarity. 2 years after this board called for a ceasefire in Gaza, we're still investing in the companies profiting from those atrocities. A ceasefire is not enough if our dollars still fund genocide. We know divestment works, as we've heard with the example with apartheid South Africa. I don't want my tax dollars or my pension actively supporting genocide, family separation, or violence or oppression, not in Palestine, not in Lebanon, not in Sudan, Afghanistan, Congo, not in St. Louis, not anywhere. We have an opportunity to end the structural violence, the quiet normalization and complicity of injustice through profit. Please, let's put our money where our values are. Vote yes on Resolution 136. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grotto. Next, we have Zoe Cross of the 6th Ward.
Hi, my name is Zoe Kraus. I am a resident of the 7th Ward. As we've heard, many people testify in support of this bill, of this resolution, and for Board Bills 93, 94, and 95. St. Louis needs investment in the people of St. Louis. The investments referred to in Resolution 136 are investments directly in opposition to the interests of the people of St. Louis. Firstly, because city employees deserve pension funds that aren't complicit in genocide, war crimes, and other human rights abuses. Because we as taxpayers deserve for our resources to be used to support the flourishing of all St. Louis. And secondly, because while it may be easy to imagine that the harms of these companies are happening somewhere else, the violence against Palestinians in Palestine is not separate from the violence that these companies cause here and around the world. Through their participation in surveillance technology used to criminalize or deport our neighbors, through environmental destruction that threatens our drinkable water and breathable air. As many of the folks in the Not Another Nickel campaign who have done the work of investigating these companies could tell you, it is difficult often to pin down the myriad ways that these companies are involved in human rights abuses. And therefore, the work that the American Friends Service Committee has done in tracking these companies is incredibly valuable in this resolution. St. Louis has a chance to be a leader and a beacon for human rights and to continue to strive to be a city that invests in the people of our city and not companies profiting from war, apartheid, and environmental destruction from Palestine to St. Louis City. I urge the members of this committee and the Board of Aldermen to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. Next, we have Monica Brown of the 3rd Ward. Danny Kahn of the 2nd Ward. I think he spoke on the other bill. Next, we have, and I'm not sure, Amanda or Aman Alzamina. I'm sorry, of the 2nd Ward.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I think we're all on the same page. This is going to pass. So I want to share a story with you that you will be helping from prevent again. I'm very shaky because I work with the children here from Gaza. We have helped Hadi, Tala, Mira, Mustafa, Salman, and now Wasim. I want to share with you Wasim's story, okay? So Wasim came here from Gaza.
Just for the sake of the cameras and folks.
He's 14 years old. He was at a school sheltering when a bomb came down on him, and he ran to his father. Another bomb came down on him, a school. That second bomb took his father's life and his leg above the knee. They put him on a donkey cart because there's no transportation, and they pulled him to the hospital. That cart was bombed on the way to the hospital, so they thought he was dead. There's no way for them to determine if someone's alive or dead in Gaza right now. They thought he was dead. They prepared him for burial. They wrapped him up in our traditional Muslim way to prepare a body, and they were praying on him. He didn't realize that they were praying on him. He thought he was beside them because he was out of it. They thought he was dead. They were praying the final prayer before burial. Another bomb comes down on the El Ma'madani hospital. This wakes him up. They are all freaking out because it looks like he's woken up from the dead. They take him inside to the hospital to do surgery. They do surgery. He comes out. He's wrapped up. He's got shrapnel. He has missing a limb. The IOF stormed the El Ma'madani hospital. They walk into his room. 2 IOF soldiers that cross-train with our police here. IOF soldiers, they use the tech to scan people's faces and know all their information that now they have cross-trained with the ICE forces here. 2 of those IOF soldiers, again, IOF soldiers, the same soldier that was found guilty for killing the 15 paramedics was later found in the Congo. Those same IOF soldiers, 2 of them walk into his room. One looks to the other and says, "Shoot him." They shoot a 14-year-old boy in the chest. And as he's sitting there, bleeding out, they ask him, "Do you want water?" He says yes. A 14-year-old boy says yes. The IOF soldier takes the water, takes a drink, spits on him, and pours the water over his head. A 14-year-old boy. That is a story that is not unique, unfortunately. I know we have stated 68,000 people dead, but that's only a number that they were able to calculate. Any Palestinian you ask, it is much more than that, because we know that over 380,000 children under the age of 5 are dead. These are the stories that you will prevent from repeating by standing by this bill. And I thank you so very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Nawal. I'm not sure. Abahandler. I see. I see.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first? Okay. Good morning. My name is Nawal Abu Hamda, and I live in St. Louis County. I'm here today to strongly support Resolution 136. Almost years ago, this very board called for a ceasefire in Gaza, recognizing the horrific loss of civilian life and the urgency of stopping violence. Yet today, we are still investing in our city's pension dollars into companies that profit directly from the violence. Companies that manufacture the weapons, bulldozers, surveillance tools, and bombs responsible for mass civilian casualties, demolishing neighborhoods and environmental harm. These are our dollars, and we have a moral responsibility to make sure that they are not used to support human rights abuses and war crimes. And I ask you to imagine how it feels like for me, knowing that my taxes are being used to help kill and harm my own people. My 4-year-old daughter, not this one, she's 12, but my 4-year-old daughter and I have become friends, very close friends, with a mother named Isra and her 3-year-old daughter named Rahaf. They survived a bomb that took both of Rahaf's legs. They came here to St. Louis for medical treatment. I see Rahaf's joy, but I also see her mother's pain and heartbreak that her other children are still in Gaza, terrified that they can be killed at any moment. When they leave, they will return to Egypt and back to Gaza to nothing but rubble. And companies that we invested in helped create that rubble and the bombing that took that beautiful 3-year-old girl's legs. And I'm also a mother of 4. Every day I feel guilty while my children have safety, heat, food, schools, and other children do not. And not only in Gaza and across the world, but here in St. Louis. We can't drive down certain streets without seeing people begging for help. We need to invest in people, in life, in hope, in the well-being of our own communities, not to fund genocides. Divestment is responsible. It has worked before, including in South Africa, and it sends a clear message that St. Louis will no longer fund these war crimes. St. Louis has stood on the right side of history before, and today you can do it again. Please vote yes on Resolution 136 to ensure not another cent of our city's money is used to harm innocent people, not in Gaza, not here, and not anywhere. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maddie Abdul-Basa and I'm 12 years old. I live in the city of Bridgeton and I am here in support of Resolution 136. I might be young, but I know what is right from wrong, and investing in companies that hurt and kill my people in Gaza is wrong. My 4-year-old sister is best friends with a 3-year-old girl from Gaza named Rahaf. Rahaf is funny, energetic, and a very sweet girl. Rahaf is just like my little sister, except that she is missing her legs due to her home being bombed by an American-made bomb. Rahaf is like other kids. Rahaf, like other kids, are suffering, starving, and dying from our tax dollars funding the genocide in Gaza. I have a long future ahead of me, hopefully, and I hope the future is filled with kindness, love, and knowledge. I love my city of St. Louis. I want to be proud of my city, but how can I be proud knowing that my parents' tax dollars are going to fund killing little girls like my sister, like me? I know you can do the right thing, and I know it sounds silly coming from a 12-year-old girl telling grown-ups to do the right thing. Actually, it sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? I want to be a lawyer when I grow up because I don't like what I see around me, all the injustice. And I want to make the world better than the world I live in today. I really hope that your decision today and support of Resolution 136 could give me that hope. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. We appreciate your advocacy.
Next, we have Letitia Walker. If you could state your ward for me.
Good afternoon. My name is Leticia Wolken. I am a proud volunteer with the Migrant and Immigrant Action Project, a member of the St. Louis Democratic Socialists of America, an immigrant justice organizer, and a Shrewsbury resident, which is in St. Louis County. Throughout my 39 years in St. Louis, I've been blessed to know the heart and the spirit of the people in this city. I've seen St. Louisans come together to sandbag during the flood of 1992, to donate to help our neighbors after the tornado in 2025, and to perennially overrun trivia nights and charity 5K races all year round. These wonderful St. Louisans, despite obstacles, despite climate disasters and economic precarity, continue doing their best to support each other and to make things better. Because I recognize and cherish the spirit of St. Louisans, I stand with and support Palestinian people in Gaza. St. Louis and Palestine are separated by thousands of miles, but we are all too familiar with struggle and oppression that persists across oceans and borders. We live every day with the heavy weight of St. Louis's history and continue pushing to create change and to build communities where everyone can live with dignity and safety. We are an incredibly multicultural city, fortunate to have so many residents contribute their food, their music, and their kindness. All of our city's residents and workers deserve to know their tax dollars and their pension funds are not used to bomb, kill, and maim Palestinians who may speak another language but have the same spirit, the same heart, and the same right to a safe and dignified life. Divesting from companies involved in genocide is an easy step we can take to show people who St. Louisans are and that we care about justice and human rights, regardless of location. The sooner we decisively act, the sooner war crimes and human rights violations in Gaza will end. St. Louis Board of Aldermen, I urge you to vote yes on Resolution 136.
Thank you. Next, we have Fatin Tamimi.
Hello, my name is Fatin Tamimi, and I am not a resident of St. Louis City, but I am a resident of County Baldwin. I had a lot written here, but it looks like...
Ms. Fatin, you're a little far from the mic.
Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm a Palestinian American, and I would love to sit here and echo everything everyone else has said, but I know it's been a few hours now, so you guys are probably ready to leave. So I'll just make it short and say that as a Palestinian American, I live with survivor's guilt, just watching my people at home being murdered, a genocide unfolding on our phones, extended family members struggling by the oppressive apartheid regime. My husband is a surgeon in St. Louis City who serves underserved communities, and as contributing members of the community, we would just like to see our tax dollars being put in companies that are not profiteering off of genocide. So I urge, the least I could do as a Palestinian living in freedom here would be to ask that you vote yes on Resolution 136, divest from these companies and invest in St. Louis, in companies ethical companies that will support the previous board bills that were mentioned today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Fatima Alkabri of Baldwin.
I'm Fatima. I live in the county. I'm a mother, optometrist, and I graduated from WashU. My mom is Palestinian, and my family has kind of suffered the consequences of Israeli occupation for generations. My mom is particularly from Gaza, so during the last 2 years, it's been just watching a plethora of ways in which her family was murdered. On October 25th that was the biggest one. Israel bombed my mom's cousin's multi-story home, and it killed 3 generations of her cousin and his wife and their kids and the grandkids, 7 children total. Their bodies couldn't be recovered for days, so it took a while to unearth them, and when they were pulled out, they were buried in a mass grave. My mom's cousin, the professor, my mom's cousin's the doctor. His kids were very educated, like a pharmacist and a professor. The professor was divorced, and so her 8-year-old son was not in the building when it happened. So he survived, and we saw footage of him crying by her graveside. But 1 month later, he was killed. So he had a grave of his own. My mom's aunt, my great aunt Noha Zainuddin, the pampered little girl of her, siblings.
My apologies, ma'am. I'm sorry, but if you could just speak up some more or speak into the mic.
Sure.
Thank you.
So my mom's aunt was the youngest, and she survived the first Nakba of 1948, and she nearly survived this one, but now she was an older woman. She had had a stroke, and so her grown children were carrying her around during this genocide on a blanket, like 4 of them carrying the edge of the corners, and they were moving her from UN shelter to UN shelter. There were UN schools that had become shelters, but those 2 weren't spared from the bombings and the shootings, and so her son-in-law was actually gunned down. He left to get food, and they shot him just outside of that UN school, and he bled out because no one could recover him. Anyone who tried would be shot at. So another cousin of hers was killed in the Flower Massacre. It's crazy that there were so many massacres that they had like monikers, but he was trying to get flour for his family and was killed in the process. It's been kind of just an unending nightmare, even post-ceasefire. Like, it's unimaginable what the people there are enduring. And I'm really grateful to you all. I'm grateful that you are taking an interest and that you're taking a stand, and I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rahab Kasim.
Madam Clerk, for people in the room, I just want to, because I think we have probably like 18 more folks, and for the people that are here that are trying to stay alders is to actually be that want to vote for it because maybe they have other things. I'm never here to limit anybody, and especially as somebody who's carrying a resolution. I totally support it. But if we, and I know I'm working with the organizer, maybe if we can have like 2 or 3 more folks that could testify on it would be helpful for, I think, like I say, the ones who do want to maybe support this but don't want to not be here to support it due to the 3-minute and the 18 more people we may have. So I think, is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Rahab, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here in support of the divestment resolution because I believe public money should reflect public values. Right now, the city of St. Louis continues to invest in corporations that profit from war and human suffering, including the ongoing assault on civilians in Gaza, where thousands of people, many of whom are children, have been killed. Whether or not every person in this room agrees on foreign policy, I hope that we can agree on something basic. St. Louis tax dollars should not be used to subsidize companies that are actively contributing to mass civilian death anywhere in the world. We have crumbling schools, we have broken streets, and we have neighborhoods that have been waiting decades for investment. Our public schools are on the verge of bankruptcy, and we can't even fix the roof on Sumner High School, yet we are giving tax breaks to multi-million-dollar corporations. For me, this issue is also personal. My husband, a doctor that works here in the city, an ER doctor, his name is Amjad Muslih. He volunteered last year on a medical mission to Nasser Medical Complex in Gaza. He witnessed firsthand the consequence of war on civilian life, not in the headlines, but in emergency departments filled with suffering people who had nowhere safe to go. It was a stark reminder that the decisions we make locally can have real impact globally, whether we intend them to or not. This divestment resolution says that St. Louis will no longer be morally or financially complicit in violence funded with our own tax dollars. And it says that every dollar has a direction and a responsibility. So I urge you, let St. Louis be a city that chooses life over profit, people over weapons, and justice over convenience. Thank you.
Next, we have Ala Jarani. Next, we have Hella Abdelazi. I'm sure I butchered it, but I apologize. Of the 6th Ward.
Good afternoon. My name is Hala Abdelaziz, and I'm a resident of Ward 6 in St. Louis City.
I'm here today to urge you to vote yes on Resolution 136 to ensure our city's retirement fund aligns with our ethics and our values. As a Palestinian and as an architect, my work is about creating spaces that sustain life. Yet for the past 2 years, I have watched thousands of Palestinians murdered by Israel and my homeland reduced to rubble. In Gaza, entire neighborhoods have been erased. Men, women, and children have lost their families, their limbs, and their futures. Thousands of Palestinians are now living in tents beside the ruins of their homes. Hospitals and universities have been bombed. There is no safe place. What's happening in Palestine, in Gaza and the West Bank for decades is not war. It is an apartheid system that controls every aspect of Palestinian life. Who can move, who can build, who can exist freely on their own land. And while this continues, corporations that supply the weapons and surveillance enabling that oppression are profiting. And my taxes and our city's retirement fund is helping sustain those profits. 2 years ago, this board called for a ceasefire in Gaza. That was a moral stand, and it mattered. But words alone are not enough. Condemnation without action changes nothing. History has shown us that divestment works. Global pressure and economic divestment helped dismantle apartheid in South Africa, not overnight, but through collective moral courage. St. Louis has a chance to be part of that same legacy, to say that we will not invest in companies that profit from occupation, apartheid, and genocide. As a Palestinian and as a St. Louisan who believes in justice, I urge you to vote yes on Resolution 136. Let our city stand for life, integrity, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ray Moslin of the 9th Ward.
Yeah, this will be our last one.
Thank you. My name is Ray Mohsen. I live in the 9th Ward, and I'm here, and I stand with we, the people. I stand with the people of St. Louis. I stand with the people in Gaza. I stand with the people of this world, because what's happening halfway across the world is happening right here in the cities, in the neighborhoods in St. Louis. We're all interreacted. We're all interrelated. What happens in Gaza, what happens in historic Palestine, all the genocide and bombing, whatever they bomb over there, they're bombing us over here. So we're investing in companies to give them money to bomb our brothers and sisters the same way they're doing it to us over here. Always, we have to stand with the people, not with corporations. Corporations, they're all what they care about is money. And that's what's happening in Gaza. That's what's happening in historic Palestine. That's what's happening in Lebanon. And that affected me directly. And I'm a tax-paying investor, resident in the city of St. Louis. I stand and I see this is the least that we can do and ask from the city of St. Louis to do such resolutions. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We just want to give a final thank you to everyone who came to testify. And for those of you all who waited, you can email the clerk as well as the Chairman Aldridge, and we can put any testimony you all have in the, any support you all have in the email drive and make sure that's available to all of them. And with that, Alderman Aldridge, I recognize you to close.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I do want to echo to everyone. Is uncommon to kind of cut off testimony, but you guys really rallied, so you should feel proud of that. We would probably been going to 5 o'clock tonight, and that speaks to, I think, the importance of this resolution and the power of when people organize, that the power really falls in the people's hand. If there are folks that was not able to speak, please make sure you email those resolution or those comments to myself or the clerk. Is it okay to send it to the BOA meetings BOA meeting at stlouis-mo.gov, or you can also email those to me so that we can make sure that the voices that was not heard today still be uplifted as well as we lead into Friday. I think there has been a lot said, and the testimonies was probably the most powerful things. There's nothing more that I can say to add to it. You know, I want to thank everyone that came out today, also the Not Another Nickel campaign for organizing this and bringing this to the forefront, not only to myself, but to other colleagues, of the importance of, as someone said, making a disinvestment, and it's less than 1% of what we're talking about, and taking an ethical and moral stand of investing in companies that will do the right thing, because everyone that is behind me, either in the city or in St. Louis County, we are one region, and what's happening in Gaza and what's happening across overseas impacts us as well. So thank you for letting me be part of this resolution and reaching out to kind of be the sponsor of this, but this is really you all's work. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the testimony. With that, Madam Chairwoman, I would just ask for a do pass recommendation on resolution.
I make a motion that we pass resolution 136 with the do pass recommendation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, may you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderman Devote.
Regretful no.
Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 3 aye votes and 1 no.
And with that, we have sustained the motion to pass resolution 136 with the do pass recommendation. Thank you all.
With that, just a heads up for everybody on that, the resolution, the floor this Friday, so please continue to reach out to alders and let them know why this is important. So thank you guys for organizing. We will move on now to the compensation study. Do we have the consultant here online? It's not online? It's green something, yes. Unless the personnel department wanted to add anything to the study, we'll just help. Okay, we'll just jump to the consultants on the compensation study.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. If you could just state your first and last name and then proceed with the presentation.
Okay, absolutely. My name is Mark Holcomb from Evergreen Solutions, and I'm the project manager.
One second. To all the members here, this study should be in the drive, even though you get to follow along. But if you want to follow along, you can also see it in the drive. You can proceed, sir.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Mark Holcomb. I'm the project manager from Evergreen Solutions who led the engagement on our side, and I'm definitely looking forward to having a chance to share with you the information here. I am not currently driving the slideshow. I don't mind sharing my screen and driving the same presentation, or
Sure.
if somebody there wants to advance, that's fine too. Does that work? Okay. Then let me share my screen real quick and we'll, should be able to move through, okay? Okay, perfect. Please stop me if you can't see, but it seems to me to be sharing, so I'll go ahead and move forward and just let me know if you have any questions or anything. On today's presentation, I will be going over a little bit of recap in terms of the study goals and the project phases. Those will detail really the things that we were brought in to take a look at and the steps that we took to actually go through the evaluation here. The employee participation, I do want to highlight that because we did have a number of opportunities for employees to participate and actually help impact the results and sort of the direction of the study. So we'll talk about that for a moment. I do want to talk about your current system findings, and I say current, but really it's when the study started. I do know there's been some changes that have occurred over the past year, so we'll touch on those a little bit as well. And then lastly, the market results and recommendations, sort of what are the things that we saw in the market, what are the recommendations we are proposing for the city to move forward with, and then the next steps to actually enact those changes. So with the study goals, we were asked to do a compensation and classification study, and really we had two main goals with that study. Number one is to look at your system to ensure as much internal equity as we can. And when we say internal equity, that refers to how your positions relate to one another within the city. So you might think of two different employees in two different departments, but they're doing the same job, they're just in different locations. We would want to know that those employees are actually compensated similarly and have the same compensation available to them. But on the other hand, with internal equity, you might look at two different employees in the same department, and maybe one of them has a much higher responsibility or complexity or degree of decision-making authority. And we would want to make sure that's reflected as well with a higher level of compensation, again, to reflect those factors. And so internal equity is all about making sure employees are placed correctly as they relate to one another in the city. Then on the second bullet, surveying peer organizations to ensure external equity, that of course is a comparison with your market peers to ensure that you all are at a competitive market rate, that you all are going to be able to compete for and bring in and retain the top talent that you need to run a city of your size and scope. And so our recommendations did focus on both of those factors. It's not simply a look at the market, and it wasn't driven by just, hey, what did the market do exclusively? But it was looking at making an internally equitable system that is also very competitive with your market. So in order to do that, we did go through four main project phases. Phase one is the outreach phase, which involves a kickoff and introduction. We met with your HR department. We met with some members of city leadership and really collected as much data as we possibly could from them. That included conversations about city priorities and history, but it also included things like your HR documents. So your organization charts, your pay policies, employee salary and benefit information to allow us to review what are you all doing right now as it relates to compensation. Phase two then was the internal analysis, which was us essentially reviewing everything that we did in phase one. Sort of in between, sort of at the end of phase one, beginning of phase two, was the actual collection of information from employees. And so again, on the next slide, we'll touch on that. But we also reviewed all of the information your employees provided directly. Those included job surveys, they included focus group information and notes, and then interviews with employees and leaders throughout the organization as well. And so in phase two, we reviewed all of that information, we analyzed the information provided, and sort of made a couple initial findings that we wanted to investigate further in phase three, the external analysis. So the external analysis was about comparing you all to your peer organizations, and we'll touch on that a little bit more at the end of the presentation, but essentially it was about finding out, how do you all compete right now with external organizations? Are you competitive in some areas? Are you behind market, or are you above? And so being able to answer those questions was important for us to make sure that when we came to our recommendations in phase four, we had a good idea of where you are placed internally and externally. So for phase four, again, we did make some recommendations. We did come up with a number of different sort of implementation options for the city's consideration. And we have worked closely with your HR and finance departments to make sure that the implementation options we've provided are options that you all can move forward with. So again, that's been an ongoing process for the last several months. Then the reporting does include things like this presentation. We have met with some employee groups, union representatives, just to explain and give a high-level overview. And then obviously the public final report document as well was shared with the city and can be utilized to explain the results of the study to employees and to citizens. So with the employee participation in the study, we do have a couple of different opportunities here. I'm going to summarize these. I know we put a little bit of language on there, but essentially the job survey, that first bullet, was the job assessment tool, is our job survey. That allowed employees to actually contribute their own opinions and thoughts about their current job descriptions. We know that job descriptions are not always up to date, and we know that there are some of evolutions that essentially happen over time to your job if you take on some additional responsibility or you take on some additional complexity in your role. So we wanted to make sure that employees had the opportunity to provide those updates to us and let us know which pieces of their jobs have evolved and which ones were no longer accurate. The focus groups were small group meetings that we held in person. We came out and met with employees and actually gave them the opportunity to essentially provide us their opinions, their priorities, their thoughts. They got to talk about the things that they like and don't like about working for the city. And so the things that they liked, of course, they talked about your benefits package, the stability. You did have employees talking about appreciation for the culture and for the employees that they work with. And then with your concerns, you certainly did hear, some people talking about concern with compensation and pay. Some people talked about job titles or job descriptions, but I think it's fair to say the number one concern that employees had was just the compensation rate, just wanting us to look at the market and see how you all stacked up. With leadership interviews, we did meet with department heads and really have the chance for them to share their priorities with us as it relates to the study. So we said, hey, are there classifications in your department that you feel might be out of alignment? Are there areas that you've had difficulty recruiting employees or you've perennially had vacancies or turnover? And so we did get to talk with leadership about that. And then lastly, the one thing we do want to illustrate as well is that supervisor review. So the information we did get from employees was, essentially about the accuracy of their job descriptions, but we did have supervisors weigh in on that as well. Because again, if we're going to update a job description or make a recommendation to change somebody's job, we wanted to give the supervisor the chance to weigh in to ensure we had somebody else at the city look at that, so that if somebody says, hey, I don't do this anymore, I do something different, we had some validation on that before making a recommendation. So with the current system findings, and this is an evaluation of your compensation and classification structure as it exists now, some strengths, you did have multiple different pay structures for different job areas. That's always good in a dynamic city of your size because it means you can address and adjust different job areas as needed on an individual basis. You did have relatively uniform structure at the beginning of the study. I do know that things have changed a little since then. So I mentioned when we started the study, you all had 30 steps on your pay scales. And I know at least some of those have been negotiated down in the past 12 months. But again, we did see that they were a relatively uniform structure and again, a number of different options for you all to make adjustments. On the weaknesses, however, you do have range spreads that are significantly wider than your peers, which means it takes your employees longer to get to the maximum of their pay ranges. And a range spread is just a measure of the distance between the minimum and maximum of your pay ranges. And so the advantage of that is if you've got a long distance between the minimum and maximum, your maximum pay tends to look pretty good, but it's hard for employees to get to the maximum. It's hard to recruit employees because paying them at the minimum can typically be a lot lower than the market when your ranges are that wide. And so that can create some challenges when it comes to recruiting and retention, as well as employee advancement over time. So again, if you come in at the minimum, you may not even reach the maximum by the end of your career. With the external assessment, and we'll come back to the recommendations in a moment, but on the external assessment, we did get responses from 16 different peers in your competitive market. Over on the right-hand side, they're listed. You will see a number of different competitors and comparators from your local area, some counties as well as some cities from across the state. We did also pull data from cities that were, matching characteristics of the city of St. Louis from your sort of greater region. So we pulled from a few of the surrounding states. The reason we do that is we want to be able to match your jobs, not just on job title, not just on, what do we call this job or what is it, purported to do. We want to actually look at the job descriptions, look at the complexity of the organization, make sure we have people who are performing the same job duties as your employees would be in the city of St. Louis. And so again, pulling from other organizations that are actually large and dynamic, and again, we know you're sort of the large public employer in your area, or at least one of the largest in the state for sure. We wanted to make sure we had a few other organizations that would have similar services, similar complexity, similar scope and scale. And so that did let us make matches around almost 200 different positions, and then apply those results again throughout the organization. So on the market results here, there's a table up at the top of this slide. On the left-hand side, you see the unadjusted results, so without the cost of living adjustment. On the right-hand side, you see cost of living adjusted results. And so what that means is if we got a result from an organization in a lower cost of living area, that means they actually have more spending power in their area. So we would adjust that to actually the cost of living in St. Louis so that it was reflective of an apples to apples comparison. You see it did make about a 4% difference there, so from about -28 to -32. And with that being said, again, looking at those pay ranges, those negative numbers do indicate that you all are trailing the market overall. Now, I do want to emphasize, I'll focus on the cost of living adjusted results on the right. That -32% number, that's a big number. And you might see that, you say, oh my gosh, does that mean that we're underpaying employees by 32%? And do we need to raise salaries by 32%? Well, the answer is not necessarily. Your employee salaries were not quite as far behind as, again, some of those numbers up there would indicate. But your pay ranges were extremely, trailing the market at the minimum of the pay range. Again, that 32% at the minimum is a very, very large number. But your city has already adapted to this, and your HR department and your hiring committees, again, you all know you've had to hire people and bring people in above the minimum of the pay range as a result of that. And so while your pay ranges are well below the market, your employees are actually a little bit more competitive. You are still trailing the market for your employees, and even at the maximum of the range, you'll see you're about 9% below the market, but certainly not quite as dire as it looks, when you first see that large number there. The other thing that we want to mention at the bottom, the city is also significantly more generous than peers when it comes to pension contributions. It was about 5% of salary, about a 5% difference for the lowest comparison that we saw. Obviously, you've got different, pensions and retirements and plans, for general and uniformed employees and sort of across your different groups. But again, at least a 5% difference in salaries. So again, 5% does not close the market gap. You all are still below the market, even when you factor in the pension contributions, but it does bring you a little bit closer than you would have been without those rich benefits that you have. So with that being said, we have a few key recommendations that we want to address. We are recommending an adjusted pay scale for general employees. And so fire uniformed employees we are recommending to keep their pay matrix. But general employees, we are recommending to go to an open range pay plan. And what that means is you would essentially have a minimum and a maximum, and then employees can be paid anywhere within that scale. That scale was adjusted towards the market to make you more competitive. We'll touch on exactly what adjustments we did on the next slide. But again, I do want to emphasize general employees, we are proposing a change here to an open range pay scale. And then fire employees, we are proposing to keep their pay matrix, but adjusting both scales towards the market. So secondly, then, when you do create a new pay scale, when we are proposing that general employee scale, you have to reassign your positions based on internal equity and the market results. And so what that means is some positions are being proposed for larger increases than others due to the market response. And so we are proposing, again, some positions that were 20, 30% below market, we're proposing large increases. Some positions were a little bit more competitive, and so we're proposing maybe 5%, 10%, again, increases to the pay ranges. And we'll show you some examples of that in just a moment. But we are proposing based on not only the market, but also your internal equity, placing people in an appropriate pay grade. Then number 3, we are proposing placing employees on the scale with a couple of different options. So again, the next slide will detail the options for the uniformed employees in fire and then the general employee group as well. And then lastly, the city can look to negotiate an across-the-board increase for all employees. I know that was something that, again, the mayor has mentioned and is something that the city would like to proceed with on their side of things. And again, we are proposing that is something you all pursue. So for the implementation options then, the general employees, we are proposing an approach called the Bring to Minimum of Pay Plan approach. And what that means is we looked at options to bring your pay grades to market competitiveness, to put you right equal with the market. And unfortunately, it was just not something that you all had the funds and the finances to do at the current moment. So we backed that plan down by 5%. And so this will bring you within 5% of our original market-based recommendations. But what that means is from a cost perspective is, again, we did not propose moving every single employee. We are proposing to move the employees who are below their pay range minimum only. And so again, just to give an illustrative example, if your current pay range starts at $40,000 and you currently make $60,000, even if your pay range moves from $40,000 to $50,000, we are not proposing that you would see an increase there because you're already above the minimum. But with that being said, if you're making $40,000 and your pay range moves from $40,000 to $50,000, we are proposing you would be adjusted by $10,000 to maintain your placement in that pay range, above that pay range minimum. For the fire department, and specifically the uniformed fire employees, we are proposing a different approach. We're proposing that they keep their placement on the matrix. So their matrix right now, you might be on step 12 or step 6 or step 7. We are proposing that you all give a flat adjustment to that pay scale. Again, that percentage can be varied depending on the affordability of the plan. But again, we're proposing that the city essentially stretch that plan up and keep employees where they are. That does mean that your fire employees would essentially have no compression as a result of this adjustment. But the cost of avoiding that compression is they may be a little further below the market. So the fire employees don't quite get to 5% of the market, to within 5% of the market, but they don't see any compression come into their plan. The general employees, unfortunately, do have a little bit of compression, but those pay scales do get your market rates to within 5% of those original market-based recommendations. So what does that look like in practice? We have a few different examples here. So for correctional officer ones, you'll see at the top, you've got the current pay information. They are starting today at about $35,000, $35,700 in the current proposed pay scale. Our recommended minimum for that classification is almost $41,000. So we're proposing you adjust your scales by a little bit less than 15%, about 14 point something at the minimum or maximum. But what you will see is because your city, again, because you all have known correctional officers are below the market, it was hard to hire, you actually are already paying all of your correctional officers at least that $40,958. And so again, we are not proposing that you would move any of the correctional officer salaries unless the city adopts that across the board increase that again would need to be negotiated. So as of now, there would be a large adjustment to the pay scale, but not to employees because they're already paid above that rate. Contrast that with your building inspectors. Your building inspectors, you're currently starting at about $39,800. We are proposing almost a 25% adjustment at the minimum of that range, get you about $49,700. And again, 25 of your building inspector ones are currently making less than $49,784. And so we are proposing those employees would move about 21%. Now, again, I want to point out and make sure we're clear to everybody, there are still 6 employees who would not receive an adjustment there. They would stay, they're above that minimum, but 25 of your 31 would receive an adjustment, again, of about 20% of their current salaries. Utility workers are in a similar position. Again, to highlight that role, you're currently starting at about $35,000. Our recommendation is about 22% higher at the minimum, about 44% higher at the maximum to match you with what the market is paying. And so again, you would see about 90 of your 145 utility workers receive an increase at about 9% of their current salary. And then lastly, your tree trimmers. Again, one more example here. 15 of your 17 tree trimmers are currently making less than what we're proposing as the starting rate there. Tree trimmers would move about 10% at the minimum, up to 20% at the max of the range. Again, receiving about a 13% increase on average there. So the next steps that we have, obviously, first and foremost, I do want to reemphasize, and I know everybody knows this here, but just want to be clear, these, of course, you all would need to negotiate and go forward. The city does have the recommendations from Evergreen. They are bringing those forward, and I believe are already working on scheduling those negotiations. And so negotiating with those unions to determine exactly what pay adjustments are brought into place would be the first step on here. Once you do have those negotiations complete, of course, completing the ordinance and budget planning, we have already been working on projections. We have provided cost updates and recommendations and have worked with your finance department to make sure, again, that this is something sustainable, but that would obviously need to be finalized after those negotiations. Then implementing the employee pay adjustments, again, currently if things go according to schedule would look to be sometime in 2026, but that would be something that based on those approved recommendations and negotiated terms, you all would adjust employee salaries, in the first half of next year. And then lastly, I do want to emphasize, this is just a first step from our regard. I mentioned, again, you all, that this recommendation would bring you within about 5% of our original recommendation. So we do believe there is a step 2 and again, a step 3, whatever it is. In the future, you all would need to continue to pay attention to that market, to continue to make adjustments. You all can look as well to do some modeling to address compression in that general employee group, because their approach, it does bring you closer to market, but it does leave a little bit of compression in the scale. And again, that's just essentially a financial commitment that's needed to be able to address that. And so we are proposing that is something that your HR or personnel department continue to look at in the upcoming years. So that was the summary presentation. Again, I did go through a little bit quickly through some of the slides, but I'm happy to address any questions if there's anybody who'd like to ask anything or have me address anything in more detail here.
Thank you, sir. So I'll go in to committee members, and since the alderman from the 5th has some time constraint, if folks are fine, instead of going in seniority, I will start with Alderman Devotie. Thank you, guys.
I appreciate that, Chair Aldridge. First off, thank you for this effort. I mean, this is amazing. I had an opportunity this morning to read the report. I admit that I did it very quickly. As you know, Mark, it's extensive, but the work behind this is very, very much appreciative. One of the questions I had. In my memory is there was a mention in the report, although you didn't talk about it here today, is some discussion with respect to positions that aren't being filled, something that during the broad budget process was referred to essentially as a salary savings, where we have a position on the books, we have a salary assigned to it, but our history, at least our recent history, is that there are a number of positions we're simply not filling for whatever reason. Did you consider as part of your analysis that aspect, that is positions that exist, that are funded, that haven't been filled for some time, and how we might incorporate that into pay moving forward?
Yeah, at different times, we did look at that in a couple different ways. Again, as I mentioned, we were working with your, personnel department as well as, your budget team to make sure that our costs were actually looked at in terms of the actual impact that you would have. Now, with those unfilled positions, historically, you may not have filled them because your pay ranges were so far below the market. You may not have been able to fill enough of those positions. We do think this actually will let you fill more of those positions, but then that's important to note that your costs could rise the more of these positions you fill. So we have been having those conversations on an ongoing basis with your, again, budget and personnel teams. It is something they're aware of. It's something they're actually working to cost directly. We did focus first on those filled positions and the employees. And again, the report actually addresses directly those filled positions, but it is something that we've had discussions with and discussions with your teams to make sure that they are aware of that for the future years. So it's a great point you bring up, and it is something we're aware of. But essentially, depending on how many positions you fill, the more you fill, the more the costs change. The fewer you fill, the less your costs change. So any numbers that were put to anything would really just be a matter of projection in terms of what are you able to fill. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and I understand. I mean, we get more competitive, we get our pay where it needs to be, or at least where it's more competitive with those entities that you identified, and we expect to fill jobs. I understand that. Interestingly, along that point, I notice in my experience that issues tend to come along three fronts. They tend to come along refuse, forestry, and police. And I thought it was interesting, at least in your summary today, that you talk in terms of, or you address, for instance, tree trimmers, which is a forestry position, as well as a utility worker. I thought that was interesting. Listening to the mayor yesterday, and I know police we're in an interesting period here now that the department has now been taken over by the state. But one of the common issues that I hear from officers, from leadership when I speak with them, is the problem of getting recruits or having qualified officers move away. As part of your analysis, can you tell us or educate us what your thoughts are with respect to police?
Yeah, and you're correct. I mean, those positions, public works positions, any of the really skilled trades positions, as well as public safety, they've definitely been hot button issues across the country, and including in your market as well. And so, yes, we did look at public safety classifications, both the police and the fire. With the police, we actually started off, obviously, in the study thinking they were going to be included. And then, obviously, with the unique nature of kind of you all know the situation there, we did actually kind of pull back and say, hey, this is not something we're actually able to control anymore and make recommendations on officially. But with that being said, again, we did work with your personnel and with your budget team to make sure there are costs that are understood, that if the police were to undertake adjustments in conjunction with any of this, you all have looked at, and we have looked at with you, the funding for those classifications. In terms of the recruiting, I think everything you said is true. I mean, it's essentially the same, with police as it is with any other position, although I think a little bit more competitive there. But it's when you can't bring someone in at a competitive rate, it's hard to get somebody who wants to come in and work for you all. And with the police, I think it really just, those positions go on. It's just maybe a little bit more of a direct comparison, because if you're looking at a certain job in an office or even in public works or in a different area, there's not as direct of a comparison to every single other organization. Whereas if it's a police officer, you're saying, well, I can be a police officer here, I can be one there, and they're going to pay me more money over there, so why wouldn't I go there? And so I think it's a very competitive environment. It's a dynamic market. And so it's definitely important to look at your pay ranges, with respect to police, but also obviously with the classifications we've made recommendations on here, public works and the like as well.
No, so understood. And I did see the public works recommendations. So I didn't miss anything when I'm reading your final report with respect to the public safety aspect or the police aspect. Is that
No, that was pulled out because we're just unable to make the recommendation since it's not something you control anymore. And that was essentially just a city discussion. We said we really can't put something in there that we're not able to actually effectuate anymore.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I don't have any questions per se about the study. I think you did a great job of covering how you went about it, and I really appreciate the work that went into it. It's really important that we pay our workers competitively so that we can get good workers and keep good workers, but it's also just important because they deserve the pay for doing that job. I do want to flag that because the police salaries are out of our control at this point, we might want to revisit something that was in the sheriff pay bill, I think last year, where we actually passed something to say that anytime a raise was made in the police salary, that there was pay parity with similar positions in the sheriff's department. And so because one of those things is out of our control right now, we might want to take a look at that. But otherwise, fantastic job on this study. I really think it's important that we did this, and I really appreciate the work that went into it.
Alderwoman Tanya.
I would just like to thank the folks who did this work. I do have a lot of questions, but in the interest that we are going on the 4th hour here, I hope that we can talk about what it would look like to bring you back another time after I've had more time to digest it, and I have to leave here shortly as well.
Sure. I will be happy to come back and support however we can. So again, we've been working directly with personnel and with the mayor's office as well. So just please have them let us know, and we'll be happy to assist.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to take a quote from the Alderwoman from the 10th playbook. You know, committee is where the work happens, to the Alderwoman of the 7th. But I know you got something else to do. One of the things I've seen in the report, in the final report, that I thought was interesting is you talked about, and it's, I think, under employment priorities. Wait, give me a second. I just had it. Oh, under the I'll just say it's like page 15, when you talk about the hiring process is widely seen as slow and inefficient, leading to delays in filing vacancies and the loss of qualified candidates. So I know a lot of what you talk about is kind of the pay process. Can you also talk about, even before getting to the pay process, what did you find in our personnel process of the what that looks like to even getting people hired on?
Yeah, so again, if I'm understanding correctly, if that's in Chapter 2 of the report, Chapter 2 was a summary of the employee outreach meetings that we did. And so those meetings took place last year. I don't remember, we might have brought in maybe 8 consultants or so on site over the course of 2 different weeks. And we met with your employees across the city. We're hosted in a number of different sites, and we had focus group meetings. We had director interviews, and really we had a number of questions with them about the things directly impacted by this study. So again, hiring rates, pay ranges, employee salaries, but also things like this that weren't able to again directly be addressed, but they were things that we know are related to that. And so one of the concerns that employees did bring up in a few different sessions was talking about, hey, it's hard enough to hire people with the salaries that we're paying, but we've had situations come up where we've tried to hire somebody, we've offered them a job, and as we're waiting, and then eventually they just get hired somewhere else, and so it didn't matter if they wanted to come here or not. They were snatched up by somebody else with a little bit of a quicker process. I do want to be clear, everything in Chapter 2, and I think there's a little disclaimer, but just to be clear on that is, these are perceptional. We have shared this information with your HR department, with the mayor's office. Again, we've gone back and forth kind of presenting this information. Some of these things are leads for them to follow up on as opposed to direct recommendations or adjustments that we can make. So we didn't actually collect data on the efficiency of the hiring process, but it was something that a number of different departments mentioned. And so we did want to pass it along to personnel as something they could evaluate and could look at while we already had the ears of employees as they were kind of sharing their frustrations with us.
Gotcha. Going back to the pay, St. Louis is unique with having civil service positions and then like non-civil service positions. and I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe to the director, would this, as we're looking at, as you looked at all different classification of different employees, is this only for civil service positions? You know, I know like the Board of Aldermen is unique where aren't, you know, civil service, but would we also, or non-civil service positions also be part of this report as you're looking at pay increases across the board? And
so on our, oh, sorry, was there someone there going to address it or?
Yeah, this, Director Understall, those types of positions weren't looked at, but we did have Paul as part of the group when we were doing this. So for an accounting purposes and stuff, Paul was keeping in mind that any money that's spent towards this has to be accounted for these other offices later. So not part of what Evergreen looked at, but part of the things that internally we were keeping in mind as we were looking at these recommendations of a need we're also going to have to account for down the line.
Okay, and I'm assuming that would be part of, you know, if future legislation come, even though Evergreen didn't look at non-civil service positions, I guess between personnel and the budget, there would be their same energy to make sure that non-civil service positions also are part of the pay increase or pay raise overall bill. Because if I'm hearing you right, you like the Board of Aldermen, they were not part of this process.
Right. Yeah. So I think there are some offices that kind of get parallel increases. I don't know if that's the case with all offices because I haven't done those pay bills, but I don't know if Paul could speak to that.
Okay. And maybe it's a later down line. I just want to, you know, as we're talking about this compensation study, I think sounds like it's clear that it's a compensation study, but not for all city employees.
Correct. Yeah. Civil service employees is what we looked at. And that's kind of why the police positions, those ones that we don't have control over anymore, were excluded down later in the study.
Because I know when the 3% happens, I know the Board of Aldermen typically opt into that citywide kind of 3%. So I was curious what that looks like for, like I say, the non-civil service departments. And maybe it's not an answer for now. It's just, or will there be a thought as we are working on legislation in the future for all city employees?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, when we presented the budget back in May, there was a line item for $10 million for pay adjustments. And of course, we didn't know what form that would take. We knew this study was going on and then there would be potentially across the board increases as such. So the way this was crafted was as the study has presented, there is a certain amount allocated for these pay adjustments resulting from the study, and then we also anticipate an across the board, and the across the board would encompass all employee groups, including those not in the civil service and those which are included in separate pay bills that typically mirror the civil service pay bill.
Gotcha. For the record, Paul Payne, the fabulous budget director for the city of St. Louis extraordinaire. One other question, did this encompass the personnel department as well?
Yeah, we were included as part of the study.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that I have on the compensation. I think it was a really good report from Evergreen. I want to thank you guys for the work that you all have done in this, even outside of the pay summary. I think it's something that we continue to work with. I mean, out of the pay chapter 3, but in chapter 2, you know, one of the things that's going to be important as we talk about uplifting pay, and I know this budget committee stand ready to support the personnel department of, you know, how do we make sure the red tape between when somebody fill out an application from personnel and departments, it seems like it goes back and forth of personnel saying it's a department saying it's personnel. And I noticed something else that was in the summary is that I've heard from people that have tried to apply for jobs is, you know, the resumes are really outdated from what the actual job title, you know, should be, and how to synchronize all that stuff, and look forward to supporting personnel that way. So I want to thank Mr. Mark from Evergreen and personnel for being here all day, and of course, the budget director, hopefully we'll be working with very soon from the Board of Aldermen on the next budget and have a good relationship with that. If any other questions from members? All right, well, with that would conclude the presentation on the compensation study. If we knew it was that quick, we probably would have started with you first.
That's
didn't
all right.
know-
Well, thank y'all very much for having me. And again, I'm happy to come back and help anytime. Thank y'all.
We'll be calling you back, and as I said, that you have Dan Gunther from the office. Like, oh, well, we didn't know that it was we didn't know it was going to be that fast. So, thank you all. We will go on the next item of the agenda, which is I don't have it in front of me, Madam Clerk. It's all these papers. I'd like
Acknowledgement of testimony.
any written or acknowledgement of testimony.
Yes, we have numerous amounts on Resolution 136, along with Board Bills 93, 94, and 95. They're provided in the Google Drive for review.
Thank you so much. Any announcements from any members? All right, seeing none, I'd like to use the Alderwoman from the 6th for necessary absence, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thanks all members for a long meeting and sticking with it. Thank you, guys.